Otaku in the Marvel DC Universe. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story and all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 826 Great Power Game. This prince from the Middle East is undoubtedly a tycoon on Earth. Blessed with good fortune, his family owns mines rich in high-quality oil resources, often referred to as the blood of industrial society. Until this resource is completely replaced by other new energy sources, their fossil fuel can continuously generate wealth, allowing them to occupy a pivotal position in the international community. Most international exchanges and trade cannot ignore the existence of these Middle Eastern tycoons. Of course, wealth alone, without matching strength, is certainly not enough. Although the Earth is small, the overt and covert struggles between countries are plentiful. The Americans, relying solely on small pieces of paper that can be infinitely printed from printing plans, exchange them for massive amounts of tangible wealth and resources. Oil, this black gold, also requires the US dollar as an intermediary for international trade because behind this is the American military power, strong enough to roam the world, providing support. However, now that times have changed and they have arrived on Xander, all these rules are facing a transformation. Yesterday, the US dollar, which was still considered the world's currency, has begun to lose its value. Here the military force that likes to flaunt and intimidate with aircraft carrier fleets is even more of a joke. Here many rules and games must be overturned and restarted now. Those 50 or so people who came to Xander from Earth with Liang Yue are spending their days touring, exploring, and recording with an excited attitude, as well as consulting materials in the virtual world and bartering for various scientific technologies. Most of the time, they are almost always huddled in the small, dilapidated building, busy doing this, establishing new rules. This time, only the prince from the tycoon country in the entire Middle East came, perhaps because he was still a bit ignorant beforehand and lacked sufficient consideration in all aspects. He did not bring any national strategic materials such as gold reserves when boarding the ship. Therefore, besides the 100,000 star yuan of basic activity funds that Liang Yue gave him, Aziz is basically penniless. It is quite difficult to use the only 100,000 star yuan in his hand to choose a commodity that can obtain sufficient benefits for the country behind him. After all, the opportunity is rare, and they may not have the chance to come to Xander for tourism again next time, especially after this month-long trip is over and everyone returns to Earth. When everyone displays the treasures they have found in the inferior technologies that the aliens have already eliminated, the quota to come to Xander again will definitely become more sought after and difficult to obtain. Such an opportunity may not be anything to countries like the US, UK, and China, but it may not be the same for other countries. Don't you see? Even the people from the Hairy Bear, referring to Russia, were almost tripped up and missed the deadline for boarding the ship if Liang Yue hadn't personally intervened later. The group of 4 from Big Hair, also referring to Russia, would have been blocked outside the gate. Of course, what allowed Prince Aziz to make a desperate bet, confidently spending most of the funds in his hand to purchase a valid planting license and a mere 100 seeds of an alien energy plant. What allowed him to make such a worry-free decision, without having to worry about others reneging later, secretly repurchasing, and then engaging in vicious competition in the same field after returning to Earth? This has to be attributed to the so-called rules that this group of people is currently discussing in the small, dilapidated building. In the end, that set of rules is actually roughly similar to the implementation of patents and copyright protection laws on Earth. However, the patents and copyrights on Earth protect the scientific, technological, and standard system processes that Earthlings themselves have created. The validity period of the commodity, technology, and patent will be adjusted at their discretion depending on the value and actual effectiveness of what they purchased. Generally, this period will be defaulted to 20 years. The energy plant species, burning crystal grass, purchased by Prince Aziz, belongs to civilian-type energy and is basically impossible to apply to the military field, and it is even a bit difficult to apply to the industrial field. In addition, this thing has excellent characteristics such as environmental protection, greenness, and stability, which are in line with the current development concepts and consensus of human society on Earth for the future. In short, in order to take care of this tycoon prince and the country behind him, The representatives of several major countries decided after discussion to grant him the full effective protection period and grant him the right of first refusal for renewal. In fact, the main reason is that this burning crystal grass does not pose any threat to the interests of major countries with the current development trend and technological level of Earth. Oil is about to be eliminated since the appearance of Stark's arc reactor, and its spread due to the Ivan Vanko incident. This trend has become increasingly obvious later, after the New York battle with the Chitauri and the alien sea battle near Honolulu, Hawaii. Technical samples in all aspects have been basically complete, at least in the field of future energy. The mainstream development direction of mankind has been determined, that is, clean electrical energy based on nuclear fusion. In this case, a plant that can absorb natural gas and combustible gas and condense into crystals, although relatively precious and profitable, cannot affect the general direction of human development at this stage. The representatives of many major countries who have come to Xander, especially China, the United States, Britain, and Russia, have basically focused their competition and game on the field of space exploration. In addition, the virtual technology field represented by the virtual world, and the scientific research results in the direction of gene therapy, are also the focus of their attention. However, the funds in everyone's hands are seriously insufficient even in the direction of space exploration, which serves as a basic means of transportation. They must unite and work together in one field while competing and playing games in this way. The smooth advancement of mankind in the direction of space exploration can be guaranteed to the greatest extent. Space exploration is a major direction, and its complexity has strict requirements on the technical accumulation of related technology fields that ordinary people cannot imagine. It is definitely not an area where you can hold a few alien spaceships in your hand, or get a few parts of the spaceship and samples of key parts, and then move forward smoothly and make rapid strides with the current technological level of mankind. It is a luxury to want to manufacture safe and reliable spacecraft for space travel within at least 10 years, even if China, which has received additional funding from Liang Yue, will hardly achieve this goal within at least 5 or 6 years unless they just want to engage in borrowing a ship to go to sea, or use the existing alien spaceship wreckage and parts to piece together 1 or 2 crewed spaceships for testing. But such things can also be achieved with the help of the several spaceships that Liang Yue lent them before. Efforts to consolidate the foundation and earnestly engage in technical accumulation are the urgent but necessary path for major countries to seriously practice. Therefore, things like Prince Aziz using a little bit of money in his hand to find 1 or 2 rare items in the Xander's used market cannot have any impact on the existing overall situation, or to put it bluntly, countries that are unable to establish scientific research outposts on Xander by taking advantage of this and the next few travel opportunities will almost lag behind others in the future. In this case, it is the right thing for those in the small, dilapidated building to formulate a set of rules to ensure their own long-term interests by using their first-mover advantage. In short, their current principle is to recognize the legitimacy of these technical products purchased with star yuan and other currency resources, in order to guarantee the interests of themselves and various emerging capitals. On this basis, try to set rules for latecomers as much as possible to ensure the legitimacy of their own interests, seemingly guaranteeing the rights and interests of everyone. In fact, it is blocking the development prospects of competitors and advance based on the existing conditions. If others want to continue to develop in the future, they will inevitably face various technical barriers. Like on Earth, if you are in a good mood, throw out a few authorizations, and if you are in a bad mood, announce sanctions. Some people who dare to break the rules. This routine is not new. Major powers have done similar things many times on Earth, so they are now doing it with ease. Prince Aziz bought a formal copyright of this burning crystal grass this time and regarded it as a life-saving straw. In fact, it was just a product of helplessness. Without enough capital in their hands, they can't afford such a great power game. Chapter 827 World Languages. In the blink of an eye, another week had passed. Inside the dilapidated building, the various teams and freelancers were still busily working. They were engaged in formulating rules, debating and arguing over various supplementary clauses, and conducting preliminary research and experiments on the scientific and technological front. If one were to only look at the progress of scientific and technological research, the Huaxia team was undoubtedly the fastest. This wasn't entirely because of the AI, Xiao's extra attention. Of course, there was definitely some looking after, but in terms of scientific research and exploration, it didn't interfere too much, at most providing some convenient conditions. For example, The two chefs' restaurant had successfully opened with Xiao's help and had been open for 3 days. With decent business, the domestic research team's research topics and directions were all chosen by themselves, just as Liang Yue had previously learned. They focused most of their energy on researching space technology. Regarding this point, other teams from Earth were basically on the same path to better improve research progress and avoid duplication of efforts between teams. Everyone had already divided up the research areas they were responsible for in advance. The reason why the research progress of the team from Huaxia was relatively smooth was not because the team members were highly skilled. Those who could be sent to Xander to establish a research base with precious quotas were all carefully selected absolute elites. The research teams of various major countries were mostly on the same level, and even to some extent, the level of personnel sent by the domestic team was slightly inferior. The most important factor that truly affected research progress was actually language. First of all, it should be noted that Xander itself does not speak English. The reason why everyone had no difficulty communicating with the people of the native planet was entirely because of the advanced technology and the powerful functions of translation earpieces and other equipment. Translation machines are naturally sufficient for people's daily communication and the life and work of ordinary jobs. But once applied to specific professional fields, some maladaptations will inevitably occur. Almost every Earthling with a little awareness knows English. Its widespread application and acquisition of the status of a world language is not because it is so advanced and easy to use. In fact, in the cutting-edge technology circles of the Earth, every step forward in the exploration of every new technology field is basically accompanied by the birth of a large number of fresh English words. Why? Because the English language itself is not suitable for research. In order to adapt to the emergence of various new things and phenomena, we can only continue to add new words to make up for the definitions of new fields and new things by experts from various fields. After years of development, this set of English used in the field of scientific research, the new nouns, words, etc. that have been invented, are no longer the same language as the English in people's daily communication because there are so many newly emerged words and compound words. Non-scholars or learners who are seriously studying a certain field simply cannot understand the meaning expressed in relevant articles even in different scientific research fields with the same cutting-edge research direction. It is equally difficult to integrate various newly coined words, and the obstacles to communication are really not small. Once you relax your study for a period of time, you may not be able to understand some relevant articles, as if you are reading a heavenly book. There is no way. A large number of scientific researchers are exploring and innovating the English language, which is really changing with each passing day. In comparison, Huaxia's Chinese basically does not have this kind of trouble. It is generally accepted on Earth that Chinese is the most difficult language to learn, not because it is obscure and complicated, but because it is advanced enough now that we have come to an alien planet and started to connect with the alien language system. The advantages will naturally be reflected, although there are occasional problems in summarizing and transforming various uncommon words, cutting-edge science, and new concepts in unfamiliar fields. They basically cannot escape the arrangement and combination of related Chinese characters. Faced with this situation, even Tony Stark frowned and scratched his head in distress. This situation is actually not the first time it has happened. In fact, the last few times they came to Xander, this nouveau riche had already realized this dilemma later. As a batch of new technologies and equipment from Xander were transported back to Earth, and formal research began, it was discovered that the English language was really unreliable, especially when Liang Yue declared that the AI, Xiao, had already understood the complete set of virtual world technology, and Stark had also obtained some information from it and brought it back to the United States. The domestic virtual world-related industries and production lines are now being assembled in full swing, and a large number of Huaxia scientific research teams are stationed in them, constantly absorbing nutrients in this field and enriching themselves on this road. We are actively learning and discussing more possibilities in comparison. There is almost no movement in the United States. Of course, the AI, Xiao, is assisting and leading the development of the domestic virtual world industry, but the language problem, as the most basic chain of scientific research, is also a major factor that cannot be avoided. This is still the case when Xiao wrote this set of scientific and technological materials in the Chinese expression system, and Chinese and English, as Earth languages, are already relatively familiar with each other. In contrast, the language system of the Xander civilization is actually similar to Chinese. Among them, various scientific concepts, principles, research results, etc. have many linguistic logics unique to their own civilization, and many special words, nouns, slang, etc. even run through the development of the entire civilization. Each of these concepts, paragraphs, and definitions, if translated into English, basically requires the creation of dozens, hundreds, or even more words and phrases under this situation. It is no wonder that the scientists from the United States, Britain, and even the Soviet Union feel confused and even at a loss for what to do. For a while in the final analysis, the language problem has indirectly raised the entry threshold for them to connect with alien technology, the so-called one step slow. Every step slow in the short term, everything seems fine after all. What the expert groups of several major countries in the small broken building are currently studying are just problems in different areas of the same field. The new things and unfamiliar technological concepts they come into contact with are still relatively limited. When the fields they study begin to deepen, the English language system will inevitably become more and more bloated. Although the English scientific research system on Earth has already begun to show some signs of being overwhelmed and running weakly, this is just the beginning. Chapter 828, Equipment worth 998,000. A month passed in the blink of an eye. Soon, amidst the reluctance and lingering feelings of everyone, Liang Yue began to carry them on the return journey of the original 50-odd people. Not all travelers chose to return to Earth. China, the United States, Britain, and the Russian Federation, having already established preliminary laboratory bases, naturally had to stay on Xander to continue operations and guard their positions. In addition, some freelancers from different countries who had good relations with these major powers and had reached cooperation agreements with each other also expressed their desire to stay. Unfortunately, most of them represented more than just themselves. After all, each travel slot to Xander was precious. Ordinary people simply couldn't afford it, nor were they qualified to spend it. They basically came with the authorization of their respective countries. Therefore, even if they had reached some cooperation agreements with the major powers during this month, most of them did not have the authority to make decisions on their own. They still needed to return to Earth, report to their respective national governments for record-keeping and discussion, report their experiences and the actual situation on this planet, and then wait for further instructions. Therefore, the number of people now choosing to return to Earth with Liang Yue was still half, about 23 or 4 people. Among these people, most were professional special observers from various countries, or scientists with mutual defense agreements. And only a very few were dignitaries with high positions and authority, like Princess Xi's from a wealthy country. Fortunately, although they were now somewhat reluctant, not knowing when they would come again, or even whether they could continue to come, everyone's gains were quite good. In addition to the rare cosmic objects and technologies they had found during this month using the 100,000 star coins issued by Liang Yue, their own translation earpieces, computer bracelets, etc., had also been given to them by Liang Yue as gifts, and people like Aunt Liu, Meng Xiaoyu, Guna, Tina, Mileva, and Stark, who had received a full 1 million star coins in activity funds, naturally gained even more. There were piles of various luggage and gifts for family or friends. However, considering that star coins were relatively precious to everyone at this stage, most of them were relatively frugal and restrained in their spending. Almost all of the remaining star coins were deposited into the accounts of the research bases of the major powers stationed there, because behind this little girl, there was no strong government force. In fact, apart from her as a specially permitted boarding person, even the Second Russia had not been able to obtain a place to land on this journey. Under such circumstances, the star coins in her hand naturally became the target of many people. Fortunately, Tina was still sober and didn't donate the money in a moment of impulsiveness, but listened to the suggestions of Meng Xiaoyu, Stark, and others, and bought a second-hand comprehensive garbage recycling device from the old goods market. She planned to take it back to Earth and start a business. It was a medium-sized device that could classify and reshape metals, plastics, and other items, and would not produce any harmful substances or gases during the process. It was an iterative product that had been eliminated by Xander hundreds of years ago. The technology was mature, and the quality was guaranteed, but the energy consumption was slightly higher. After all, although this thing was said to be a medium-sized device, its size was as much as dozens of meters, and it came with a complete conveyor belt system. With other various components dragging along, it required nearly 1,000 square meters of space alone, but fortunately, its throughput and work efficiency were really not low. In the extreme state, it could process more than 10,000 tons of various metal and plastic waste every day. Therefore, just after Tina had placed the order, Meng Xiaoyu and Stark sent cooperation applications on behalf of China and themselves, respectively. Then, Tina, who was a little at a loss, turned to Liang Yue for help. Liang Yue was also very straightforward about this, saying that he could let the intelligent brain Xiaowu help her design a product production line, which would be specially responsible for producing this kind of garbage recycling and reprocessing mechanical product in the future with a series of additions, Tina was immediately stunned. It was not until she was coaxed by Meng Xiaoyu to sign and stamp the agreement to put the production line in China that she gradually came back to her senses. However, in terms of the current business models of various countries in the world, putting the production base in China is indeed a very correct choice. First of all, you can rest assured about safety, the business order is very stable, and then the cost of various raw materials can basically be reduced to the lowest in the world. It can guarantee that this comprehensive garbage disposal machine will be mass-produced in the shortest time and then sold to all parts of the world. So, after receiving Liang Yue's guarantee, other representatives from various countries in the small broken building also sent cooperation applications to Tina without hesitation. They naturally couldn't interfere with the production links, but the agency rights and usage rights of various countries and regions were also very promising. Obviously, not only Meng Xiaoyu and others were optimistic about the future of this second-hand garbage processor, but others were also optimistic about it. After all, they had spent a lot of time this month on Xander's second-hand trading website, or on those trading platforms specially used for aliens to find out of date technologies and products like this that can help the Earth solve the problems of resource recycling, and industrial and white waste pollution are naturally the focus of everyone's attention. It's just a pity that this thing is too expensive. It takes a full 998,000 star coins to get a second-hand product, which is not something that people with only 100,000 activity funds in their hands can get. The three major powers, China, the United States, and Russia, can afford it, but at this stage, this kind of technically positioned equipment is not the first priority of the three major organizations, and Liu, Meng Xiaoyu, Natasha, and others are also the same. They and the forces they represent are not allowed to spend their limited funds on purchasing this kind of technological product that simply contributes to the world's industrial chain, even if this kind of thing looks really beautiful and cannot be effective in key areas such as cosmic ocean navigation. It is useless and can only be temporarily abandoned. It is more like princesses from the Middle Eastern tyrant countries. Who needs this kind of thing? It can guarantee that the country behind them will have considerable profit points for a considerable period of time in the future and will not be eliminated by the development trend of the world's industrial system. It's just a pity that this thing is too expensive, and a single player can't afford it at all. It takes at least 10 quota holders to buy it together, but the problem is that the 10 people in the small broken building not only represent themselves, but also have different countries and organizations behind them. The problems between them are too complicated, and there are too many unstable factors. Their respective interests and grievances make it almost impossible for them to combine their forces, put all their wealth together, and then buy something together. Stark has this condition. With a net worth of 1 million star coins and a relatively willful personality, he can also afford this kind of big item. It's a pity that this dog tycoon's personal hobbies don't allow him to do this. The personal version of the steel armor is the true love of his life, especially after Stark saw the general-purpose mechanical armor designed and manufactured by the intelligent brain Xiao Wu in Liang Yue's basement. His will became more and more firm. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 829, A Time of Great Contention. The journey back was very short. The group didn't even pass through the Asgardian station again before directly appearing in Earth's outer space. Soon after, the spaceship landed smoothly and quickly appeared at Liang Yue's manor. At this moment, the group of more than 20 people in the Dolphin were very relaxed. In an instant, having crossed millions of light years and nearing their home planet and homeland, everyone's faces unconsciously carried pleasant smiles. Furthermore, they all seemed very satisfied with this trip to Xander. Only Liang Yue, at this moment, slightly furrowed his brows, his expression still carrying a hint of doubt and seriousness. But it quickly disappeared. I think we can organize more of these kinds of trips that are beneficial to both the body and mind in the future. Nick Fury, with his hands behind his back, slowly walked off the spaceship, seemingly summarizing this alien journey as he walked. As soon as his words came out, they were quickly echoed by everyone around him, a group of people who were worried about how to board the ship next time and when they would be able to go to Xander again immediately followed suit. You should know that the starting point of this trip was somewhat accidental, and it was publicly claimed to be only to give back to the kindness of the donors of the charitable foundation. Then, since it is an activity for returning VIP users, according to the logic of general operators, it is naturally impossible to carry it out too frequently, because it may lose money. In fact, the little money they had previously donated to the foundation, placed on Xander, or even compared to the 100,000 star yuan activity funds Liang Yue issued to each of them, was nothing at all. Moreover, even if we don't consider the frequency of such return activities, or follow the previous method where places need to be randomly selected, the uncertainty is too high. It doesn't matter much to major powers like the US, UK, Russia, and China. At worst, they can use their influence to seize them by force, or rely on personal relationships to get a seat on the ship from the organizers. But for these scattered individuals present who are only backed by medium-sized or even small countries, they can't afford to play this kind of game. They are afraid that a negligence will result in them not getting a place on the next trip and being left behind. For them, this is definitely a very serious loss. If they are not careful, they may fall out of the ranks of the world's great powers and then watch some emerging small countries rise up. You should know that China, the United States, Great Britain, and Russia have now established stable scientific research bases on Xander, and are racing against time to decipher, reverse engineer, and learn various advanced technologies from the universe. No need for much. If they miss out on such an alien journey, fail to get a spot, or simply get fewer spots, they will inevitably be left behind for a considerable period. And what this involves is not just a simple technological competition, but a new round of the great spacefaring era's technological reserves. It's the updating and iteration of aerospace engineering. It's even the ceremony of launching the great spacefaring era. Thinking back to the great sailing era on Earth, its impact continues to this day, profoundly affecting the entire world's landscape. Many countries and nations have perished because of this. And a small group of barbarians who once lived in the western part of the world island have taken the opportunity to rise up and become the mainstream in this world. Now, another great spacefaring era with a wider scope and more profound significance is approaching at a visible speed. This included Aunt Liu, Meng Xiao, Stark, and even Tina. After all, although this matter seems to be just a trip, the impact is extremely far-reaching. Everyone present hopes that he can give a clear answer. Seeing this, Liang Yue sighed softly and said the second trip will be scheduled for 3 months later, and the selection of places will be held 2 months later. A donation of $10,000 will qualify you to participate in the selection, and repeated donations are invalid. The quota for each country is limited to 100 donor lists, and those exceeding this number will be randomly removed. The number of places will be expanded from 30 to 45, and Mirava, Tina, and Guna will still be responsible for the selection. Places can be freely traded, but compensation for the places must be in place. I also don't want to hear about any forced buying or selling. As he said this, someone glanced meaningfully at Meng Xiaoyu opposite him. Seeing this woman immediately understood the meaning in his words and immediately rolled her eyes at him. In addition, in view of the fact that the United States once set up a checkpoint a month ago to intercept 4 scientists from Russia, almost causing them to be unable to catch the spaceship in time. Therefore, in order to avoid this situation from happening again, I have decided to change the boarding location for the next trip to the northwest region of China. I have a piece of land near Lopner there. As far as I know, that seems to be a desert, and the environment is not very good. A half-bald scientist from the blast furnace country couldn't help but speak at this time. Hearing this, Liang Yue moved his mind, and a holographic light curtain popped up from the smart brain Xiao's bracelet on his wrist. On the light curtain, the transformed small city, as well as the river valleys and basin forests near the upper and lower reaches, were displayed in front of everyone. A month ago, I transformed this area a bit, and it has now formed a farm and pasture area covering millions of acres, as well as a larger oasis area. When the time comes, I will reorganize the surrounding area again and transform it into a base suitable for spaceship takeoff and landing. As he spoke, Liang Yue asked Xiao to open the Dolphin spaceship warehouse and release the luggage that everyone had brought. This time he also brought over 20 or so rectangular Airbuses from the Stronghold world, each about 10 meters long and 6 or 7 meters wide, responsible for directly sending the people present and their luggage back to their respective countries. The United States was able to set up a checkpoint to intercept the Russian group of 4 before, and it may not be able to shamelessly fleece another wave of wool from these scattered individuals. A month later, randomly deducting a few seeds from these people's luggage, taking away a few parts, etc., will have a significant impact. In order to prevent this situation from happening, Liang Yue felt that it was still very necessary to arrange the subsequent itinerary for these passengers soon. After more than half an hour of commotion, a group of travelers from all over the world finally left the sky with excitement, taking their gains from this trip and going their separate ways. It is conceivable that when they take the alien items, alien technology, and functional species in their hands back to their country and begin to apply them in practice, a series of effects will follow for the ordinary public. Although the charitable foundation's selection of places previously adopted a random lottery model and did not deliberately conceal it, even the official website of the foundation clearly stated that they were going on a trip to an alien planet. However, Tina and Miraba's foundation is too unpopular. After all, very few ordinary people can pay attention to these things. Most of them probably think it's a prank and won't take it seriously. However, apart from the ordinary people, in fact, the high-level officials of various countries, many elite groups, and even anyone with a little ability to know the truth about this matter, have paid extra attention to their trip. The return of everyone present is not considered a secret in the eyes of various countries, and it is expected that the world situation will inevitably be turbulent in the next 1 or 2 months. Many people and countries who have truly seen alien civilizations by taking advantage of this trip will not give up the opportunity to go to Xander in the future, and countries and forces that were unable to get a place on the first trip will not choose to lie flat and let the opportunity to rise slip away from their hands. Therefore, it is now almost visible to the naked eye that a great era of contention is coming. Chapter 830, Time and Space Distortion. Why don't you just open a space channel like you did before? Would that take us back to China in one step? During the flight, inside the air transport, Meng Xiao looked at Liang Yue beside her with a somewhat affected posture and asked, the space environment near Earth has been a bit unstable recently. The space channel I opened from Xander before, I originally intended to connect directly to the manor, but unexpectedly, it deviated into outer space. To avoid causing some unnecessary trouble, it's safer to go through normal channels now. Liang Yue didn't even look at her when he heard this, his eyes fixed on the panoramic sand table of Xiao inside the air transport. Since leaving their manor, in just over a minute, they had already crossed most of the Pacific Ocean. This speed is actually not slow now, only a dense space wormhole remains, connecting these 9 planets located in different regions of the universe. In a sense, the relationship between these 9 planets is closer than the 9 major planets in the solar system. Their overlap will cause some natural anomalies, which is also reasonable. As he spoke, Liang Yue also had the intelligent Xiao present a general world tree network and a schematic diagram of the 9 major planets on the small holographic sand table inside the vehicle cabin. Will this cause any crisis? It's just a natural phenomenon. It will disappear over time. Some people may take the opportunity to cause trouble, but this time the center of the space-time confluence is not in China. Someone will step in to stop it then. Oh, that's good. I thought it was another crisis. Hey, you say. If you have something to say, just say it, don't try to make conversation ahem. This time, didn't I also bring back a kind of oil plant from Xander? According to the description on the instruction manual, this plant likes sunlight. The greater the temperature difference between day and night, the better the quality of the oil produced, but it consumes a bit too much water. I was thinking, what were you thinking? Tisk, it's just near your farm. Haven't several new rivers been opened up recently? And didn't you say before that the water source can keep flowing for a century without stopping? I was thinking of planting this oil plant there. What do you think? Unlike Aunt Liu's frugality on Xander, after receiving the 1 million star dollars that Liang Yue transferred, she hardly spent any money, and gave it all to the 10-man group in China without touching it. Meng Xiao, on the other hand, actually spent some money, but her spending was not much at most. She was on par with Prince Aziz of the UAE, spending 80 to 90,000 star dollars to buy the legal right to use a genetically modified and optimized functional crop, and 100 corresponding saplings. Then, the remaining 900,000 star dollars were all left to the 10-man group as operating expenses for the scientific research laboratory. Compared to Tina's extravagant purchase of a second-hand medium-sized integrated waste sorting and processing device for 998,000 star dollars, this spending was indeed not much. And the functional plant that Meng Xiao chose was this kind of tree species that could be used to extract high-quality vegetable oil. Obviously, compared to Aunt Liu's complete selflessness, living and eating basically in the small broken building, Meng Xiao's little thoughts were not completely extinguished. The reason for this factor is probably boredom. After all, Aunt Liu is now in charge of the industrial chain integration and sales work of the Gene Therapy International Group, and she is very busy all year round. It was already beyond Liang Yue's expectations that she could go to Xander this time, and Meng Xiao, this little girl, after replacing Aunt Liu and sister Lu Yao as Liang Yue's small secretary for contacting China, has almost nothing to do. She didn't pursue her original aerospace major, and directly became independent, specializing in handling various affairs with Liang Yue. The previous contracting of the desert in the northwest to build a farm was the first thing Liang Yue entrusted to her, but the results were not very good. However, Liang Yue didn't have any objections to Meng Xiaoyu's plan to engage in agricultural planting with those water sources. Anyway, if those hundreds of dense river networks were not utilized, the water resources would be wasted instead of all being evaporated by the western land or melting into the groundwater under the soil layer. It would be better to use it to do something practical. A few more minutes later, the air transport arrived in China. When passing through Su province, Guna took Tina and Mara off the bus, preparing to take them home. To have a look, Liang Yue didn't go. He took Aunt Liu and Meng Xiaoyu to continue forward. To be precise, it was to implement a matter of Tina's integrated waste sorting processor. This kind of machinery, which has been eliminated by Xander for hundreds of years, is naturally not an advanced technology in front of the intelligent Xiao. Even the related industrial chain that Liang Yue promised to provide has been produced in just a few days. However, this thing is indeed a good thing for the current Earth. Not only Aunt Liu and Meng Xiaoyu, but also a group of related people in China attach great importance to it. Thinking about it, it is also very normal. Given the current pollution level of the Earth, the amount of garbage produced, and the inability to deal with various white garbage, there is indeed a need for such a professional garbage terminal processor. It's no wonder that Tina received cooperation applications from other passengers as soon as she won the machine. The meeting and reporting matters are not mentioned for the time being. After all, only Aunt Liu and Meng Xiaoyu needed to report their experiences. Liang Yue just acted as a driver along the way. The reason why he had to personally return to China was only because the machine that Tina bought was too big. Although it was called medium-sized, the physical area covered nearly 1,000 square meters, and various modular components were piled up together in order to facilitate management and the assembly and manufacturing of supporting production lines. Liang Yue directly put it into the stronghold world. At that time, he naturally would not participate in the issue of putting this production line into operation in China, or the specific commercial cooperation content. After following Aunt Liu and Meng Xiaoyu into the relevant department, he just exchanged a few pleasantries. After asking clearly about the factory location agreed upon by both parties, Liang Yue came directly to that area. He personally leveled and hardened the original ground, and summoned a robot construction team from the stronghold world. Then, according to the production line factory construction drawings of the intelligent Xiao, he began a rapid and orderly modular assembly project. Such specialized, high-tech construction engineering and factory assembly industries are not as simple as building blocks. Simply building the factory, in addition to the necessary site conditions, it also requires many supporting professional equipment and infrastructure construction. The process is cumbersome, the standards are uniform, and the requirements are very high. But in the hands of the intelligent Xiao's robot construction team, the process is actually similar to building blocks. In just half a day, on the land that Liang Yue leveled and hardened, under the orderly work of thousands of professional construction robots and a series of high-tech construction machinery and equipment, a high-quality, high-standard, and C5-filled large industrial chain industrial park was completed just like that. Chapter 831 Universe Pavilion Airport. Subsequently, that same evening, Liang Yue, through the intelligent AI Xiao Wu, sent Meng Xiaoyu the news about the completion of the comprehensive garbage sorting, processing, recycling, and reuse mechanical production line and industrial park. Along with it were also sent a complete set of basic materials, related spare parts that could be manufactured domestically, and parts of the industrial chain. As a great cultivator in the tribulation stage, and the world's richest man in the eyes of the public, he naturally didn't need to personally handle such fragmented tasks as finding matching suppliers. Moreover, if Liang Yue were to do it himself, there would basically be nothing left for others to do at that time. He would complete all the links in this industrial chain, including upstream and downstream, raw materials, and all parts, in one go. Some of the links and technologies involved are actually not weaker than the previous gene therapy system in terms of the current level of technological development on Earth. However, compared to the fields mainly covered by gene therapy technology, such as biology, genes, medicine, and precision instruments, the scope covered by this industrial technology system of garbage sorting and recycling mainly manifests in mechanics, physics, energy, and materials science. In the document that Liang Yue just sent to Meng Xiaoyu through the intelligent AI Xiao Wu, It involved dozens of new metal alloy material formulas and thousands of patent applications in related mechanical and structural fields. Once these are digested and absorbed, many related enterprises, and even industries, in the country will inevitably usher in another wave of technological innovation and industrial optimization and upgrading, and this is all after Liang Yue picked and chose, and removed some important core-level confidential technologies, and then sent a wave of benefits for free after receiving his gift. The relevant departments immediately attached unprecedented importance to it. The next afternoon, they quickly organized a group of experts, scholars, and senior engineers and draftsmen in the field of architectural engineering to visit and study, and they conducted a series of surveying, calculations, and preliminary assessment plans for subsequent supporting engineering facilities in the surrounding area of this industrial park. According to Liang Yue's previous requirements, this piece of land was designated in a small, unremarkable city in Xianfu, and it was still in the suburbs. The conditions in all aspects are good, the scenery is pleasant, and the land cost is cheap, making it very suitable as a high-tech industrial park. Finally, in terms of talent, to be honest, the intelligent AI Xiao Wu has thoroughly researched the technology on this industrial chain, and no additional investment or superfluous actions are needed. Although the technical components and production links that Liang Yue separated out do require a lot of talent to reverse engineer and study in depth, they don't necessarily have to come here to reinvest in building factories with the development prospects of this comprehensive garbage sorting and processing equipment. There is also sufficient profit space to maintain the multi-location combined operation of this system. In short, the leaders attached great importance to this industrial chain, and in order to enable them to have a more in-depth and professional understanding of what is going on before leaving. In addition to the robots used for daily maintenance and responsible for guarding, Liang Yue also specially left a few robots that had been input with relevant technical knowledge to explain to the visiting scholars. As for receiving these visitors, Liang Yue would definitely not show up after leaving the industrial park. He went directly to his agricultural and pastoral small town located in the northwest of Lopner. After more than a month of development, the internal operation of the small town's ranch, as well as the milk powder factory, slaughterhouse, and logistics and transportation company built on the river network, have also begun to operate. Of course, most of the dairy cows, beef cattle, and meat sheep in the ranch have not yet grown up, and it will take some time before they can officially operate. However, thousands of various dairy cow milkers, cattle herders, sheep herders, vegetable growers, workers responsible for the fishing grounds, and the tens of thousands of chickens, ducks, and geese farms have gradually arrived. I have to say that although Meng Xiaoyu's secretarial work is a bit lacking, the entire operating system she represents has truly amazing energy. In addition, thanks to the establishment of the logistics and transportation company, and with a stable water source and river network, the surrounding area is predictably getting better and better. Some people belonging to relevant departments also seem to intend to station nearby and establish a set of departments similar to observation stations, scientific research stations, archaeological bases, and related departments to maintain the daily operation of the area. Liang Yue's ranch, covering several million acres, may seem small in the entire barren northwest, but if you think about it carefully, the area of the small town is actually much larger than the fishing village cities in the southern coast of China. In addition, in the upstream and downstream areas of the small town, there are dozens of stable river networks that encircle the riverbank abundant water areas, and large areas of riverbank forests that were, CUI with Macron Xing, expedited the growth of, by someone with magic. The entire process, placed in the western land, is actually a water and soil environment with quite superior conditions. In addition, when Liang Yue returned from Xander a few days ago, he also said in his own manner that the spaceships that regularly fly to Xander in the future will take off from northwest China. In this way, the relevant levels will naturally pay more and more attention to this newly created superior area. It's only been a week or so when Liang Yue hardened and leveled a piece of desert land outside the small town, which was originally only used for drying grass stacks and silage, and regularized a high-quality ground with a radius of 5 or 6 miles. A large group of professional military industrial teams came to the small town again in jeeps, transport vehicles, and taking Liang Yue's logistics company's air passenger transport. Among them, there were personnel sent by relevant departments to survey, map, and construct, and there were also construction teams recruited by Meng Xiaoyu. Finally, Aunt Liu came forward and had a negotiation with Liang Yue, and finally determined the request to build related operating facilities on a rolling barren mountain in the northeast of the small town and the newly leveled space shuttle airport. Liang Yue also took action again. next to the functional building surveyed and planned by the relevant departments, and once again created an artificial lake among the hills and mountains. After a little dredging, several rivers flowed down along the way, winding towards the old lakebed of Lopner. Chapter 832 Pacific Rim? What do you think of the batch of oil plants I brought? Not bad. Aren't those the 100 oil plants you bought from Xander? They're one of the recommended products from various planets. Still in the early stages of civilization development, they're considered a flagship product in terms of promotion. So many planets say they're good, so the quality is definitely not a problem. Bringing this kind of thing to Earth, the profit margin should be quite high then. Do you have any ideas? Just say what's on your mind, my land. Isn't it just starting to be leveled and plowed? After that, I still have to install electricity, repair roads, and lay drip irrigation pipes. It won't be up and running for at least half a year, so I plan to find a place in your small town to plant the saplings first, preferably to propagate them for several generations, produce several batches of seeds, and then cultivate the seedlings in your greenhouse. After the drip irrigation is laid, try to cultivate tens of thousands of seedlings, so we can plant them then. Your drip irrigation, are you planning to draw water from the river? The engineering team just went to check, and the water flow in the upstream river is okay. Drawing water is not a problem, but we need to dig a separate lake next to it and fill it up. Actually, it would be best to pump water from the lake on the mountain. That side is stable, but it's a bit far away. Just pump from the fish pond in the small town. Your fish pond doesn't look very big. The fish pond and the lake on the mountain have stable water sources. The mountain has a large drop, so it looks like there's more water, but actually, they're about the same. Oh, then hey, why don't you just help me build a fish pond too? It's not far anyway. In the small town's farm planting base, Liang Yue was currently walking among the vibrant ridges, with rows of alien vegetables growing everywhere around his feet. Further away, there was also a batch of alien fruits, which were about to ripen. A group of agricultural experts had formed a research team, taking a group of students with various professional instruments, squatting in the fields, carefully observing and recording the growth of the plants. Meng Xiaoyu was following behind Liang Yue, haggling with him with a smile, looking like a little fox. Do you know where you and Aunt Liu differ? What's wrong? It's just borrowing some water from you. Are you unwilling? Aunt Liu never asks me for help with these small things. Even if there are more difficulties, she does it herself. You, after a while, go and be responsible for the Xianfu production line again. What? You want to send me away again? You should go and get some experience first. In addition, the location from which this anomaly came was from the deep seabed of the Pacific Ocean. Thinking of this, Liang Yue flipped his sleeve and took out a portable holographic sandbox from the stronghold world while letting Xiao Wu deploy it. He also took the time to glance at Meng Xiaoyu next to him. He saw that Meng Xiaoyu was rolling her eyes again, squinting at him with her big eyes, obviously dissatisfied with his previous words. However, Liang Yue ignored her at this time, and casually took the 100 oil plant saplings piled up outside the small town, and urged them with magic power, planting them in a blank area in a corner of the farm that had not yet been sown. Just a few seconds later, as the sandbox unfolded and a panoramic light curtain popped up, that small batch of oil plants had already grown rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then they bloomed, bore fruit, and fell immediately afterward. The fruits took root again in the place where they fell, and grew new shoots. Then the new seedlings began to grow again, bloom, bear fruit, and fall, thus repeating the cycle 7 or 8 times. A small forest formed by the so-called high-end alien oil plant appeared in that planting area, turning the original yellow sand into a lush clump covering an area of hundreds of acres, densely packed. Although it is the same plant, its plants are tall, short, fat, and thin, each different, just like a naturally growing lush rainforest, squeezing the entire area full. Roughly estimated, there are at least tens of thousands of trees. This phenomenon immediately stunned a group of agricultural experts not far away, as well as the students around them. Originally, they had been bending over and squatting on the ground, observing alien crops, but just taking the time to stretch their waists, a forest grew out in front of them. This is definitely a subversive challenge to the education they have received for a long time and the worldview formed by decades of life experience. Meng Xiaoyu on this side was already somewhat adapted to these things. After all, she had basically participated in the entire process of establishing this small town's farm and ranch, as well as the surrounding rivers and forests. At this time, the little girl's eyes were following Liang Yue, looking at the center of the panoramic sandbox. What's wrong? What is this? It should be something that wants to build a space gate and come over from the other side. Liang Yue replied casually. It could be seen that the area displayed on the panoramic sandbox at this time was the seabed of the Pacific Ocean, to be precise. It was in a trench probably located 4 to 5,000 meters deep, where large amounts of dust and sand were suddenly rising, forming a muddy area of nearly 1,000 meters in radius, and in the center of that muddy area, a ball of light was gradually expanding. At first, it was only a few tens of meters, then it continued to expand, and in a few minutes, it became a circular light cluster with a diameter of about 200 to 300 meters. Soon, the seabed dust dissipated, and a special space channel appeared there within the originally dark trench. The energy halo constructing the channel seemed a bit dim, but it was enough to illuminate the surroundings. The person who opened this channel clearly had decent space construction technology. After the channel stabilized, the spatial fluctuations became subtle. What's more amazing is that it's actually not easy to build a stable and accurate space channel on Earth right now, with space-time distorted. In addition to technology, it also takes a bit of luck. From Liang Yue's perspective, the technology mastered by the force or civilization on the other side of the channel doesn't seem to have reached the point where it can ignore the natural power under the current parallel of the 9 major planets and the penetration of the world tree veins. Sure enough, after about a few more hours, when the northwest land of China began to gradually enter the night, and the sky above the small town became starlit under the gaze of Liang Yue, Meng Xianwei, and a group of agricultural experts, military industry executives, and senior military generals, the people on the other side of the channel seemed to be unable to help but start a covert test towards the Earth side. Their method of exploration was also very unique. They actually directly projected a biological weapon to the Earth side through this space channel. The appearance of this biological weapon was a bit like an armored dinosaur, 80 to 90 meters tall, and nearly 200 meters long, including the tail. Its whole body was covered with fleshy bumps, and its surface was covered with thick scales, with a battering ram on its head. But immediately afterward, this thing was crushed into a meat pie by the water pressure on the seabed under the gaze of the people who were sitting around the campfire eating barbecue. Large swaths of dark blue blood, along with minced meat and broken bones, splashed all around, turning into a large mess. Chapter 833: Monsters in Action. Biological monsters. Were these things also manufactured? It's just a different direction of civilization development. It's probably determined by their respective living environments. In the face of an unknown path, using them to explore the way is not a bad method. That's right. Those invaders on the other side clearly don't quite understand what kind of world they're facing. Even connecting the space channel to the bottom of the Earth's sea might just be an accident. This isn't good news. Those guys on the other side of the space gate should be able to control it in some way, or even observe this world in real time through the eyes of these monsters. That's terrifying. I think their civilization level shouldn't be too high. Otherwise, they could completely send an unmanned spacecraft over. This way, the size can be controlled. It would be more concealed, and it could also cope more easily when facing various environmental constraints, without directly being crushed by the ocean like just now. But even with the constraints of the ocean conditions, it's not safe. Since the other side can open a space channel and create such large monsters for testing, they can definitely improve and adjust these biological weapons according to different environmental conditions. Are you saying that the next wave will be aquatic species? Isn't that obvious? By the campfire, facing this sudden foreign invasion threat, a group of agricultural experts and students couldn't help but start discussing, their faces filled with uncontrollable excitement. On the other hand, several generals from the military appeared very calm and serious at this time, constantly using the hardware communication facilities in the small city to maintain contact with certain departments in the country, and providing them with real-time video broadcasts and real-time military situation analysis. Liang Yue, as the host of this small city, didn't have much reaction. He was calmly drinking tea and tasting alien vegetables and fruits in his heart. He was pondering about planting these fruits and vegetables from the universe in the stronghold world for cultivation. The alien civilization that opened the gate on Earth this time is obviously a newbie. The technical level is okay, but the development route of science and technology seems a bit strange. Biological weapons like these 100-meter-tall monsters, although they look quite intimidating, their performance in all aspects doesn't seem to be as good as the EVA series from the Neon Genesis Evangelion world. It seems that they can only bully civilizations that haven't left their home planet yet. Afterward, when he noticed that the people around him were no longer in the mood to eat and drink, and were concentrating on discussing the invasion, Liang Yue stretched out his 5 fingers. A bright blue light suddenly rose from his palm. Then, he unhurriedly reached forward. In an instant, his entire palm seemed to turn into nothingness, as if it had disappeared from this world. Then, the next moment, when his palm retracted, there was an exquisite piece of scale armor in his palm at the same time. In the panoramic sand table, the monster's remains, which had been watched and stared at by everyone, disappeared from the sand table image after a burst of distortion and trance. Liang Yue, who had been paying attention to a certain person, immediately reacted at this time, widened her eyes with an excited look, and asked, looking at the skin in his hand, is this thing the remains of that monster? Yeah, didn't you say that the situation is special now and can't be used? It's not that it can't be used, it's just that the space-time distortion around the Earth makes the special abilities performed with the help of spatial laws no longer as accurate as before, but I'm using my own abilities now. I don't understand, isn't this the same? It's not the same. It's like you live on the 30th floor. If you want to go home, the rule is to climb the stairs. Using the rules means you can take the elevator, but I can fly directly. Then how about this monster's skin? Can it be used to refine magical treasures or something? Those monsters in movies have atomic breath and fiery lotus flowers. What about this one? It's okay for biological technology research. By the standards of cultivators, it's just a low-end product. It's okay for newly entered disciples to use, just like the people in the Neon Genesis Evangelion world did with the research on the apostles. In addition to finding its weaknesses, preventing them in advance, and targeting them, they actually wanted to research something from it, but this was obviously not easy. These so-called monsters didn't have outstanding abilities in all aspects. Well, not as good as cultivators in the golden core stage. The overall strength is probably equivalent to the foundation establishment stage. However, the monster's strength is mainly reflected in its size, armor, and physical strength. Being thick-skinned is an advantage, but its weaknesses as a living being still exist. To put it bluntly, this monster weapon follows the biological armor stream. It basically has no energy emission abilities for heroes among humans. People on the level of Captain America, such as the Winter Soldier, are naturally difficult to play any role in front of this monster that is hundreds of meters tall. But with the help of the power of various sharp weapons and tools, Stark and others can also inflict fatal blows on them. Transformers, mage groups, etc., even if they fight one-on-one, have the strength to kill the opponent. In short, the world in front of you is not an ordinary technological plane, but a melting pot universe that combines multiple systems. Monsters of the Pacific Rim level may bring some losses to the Earth and the world in front of you, but it is basically impossible to force governments to build walls on the coastline like in the original plot. Sure enough, the next day, when the northwest land of China began to recover, and the hazy dawn had just broken through the morning mist covering the small city, anomalies appeared again in the space channel located on the seabed of the Pacific Ocean. Several soldiers who had been guarding in front of the panoramic sand table all night immediately reacted and contacted the others who were doing morning exercises on the walls of the small city. Soon, under the focused gaze of everyone, another monster emerged from the passage. Compared with the previous one, this biological weapon already had obvious differences. At the very least, it was not crushed by the water pressure when entering the underwater world, so it can be seen how high the body strength of this thing is. Its whole body was dark green, and its whole body was covered with heavy, rough armor, as if it was wrapped in a layer of bark that had grown for hundreds of years. Moreover, in addition to still being thick-skinned, large, and sturdy, it also had some characteristics of aquatic species. Its body was generally streamlined, but its internal bones protruded. Its head was hideous, its chin had long fangs, and its claws were thick and sharp. Between twists and turns, it could move freely in the sea. After wandering in the silent deep sea for a while, this thing randomly chose a direction and went straight ahead. It also began to float to the shallow sea, and then kept swimming underwater at a depth of about 100 meters below the sea surface. Obviously, this big guy is very cautious. Although it is a biological weapon, with the responsibility of exploring the way and destroying the living environment of the Aborigines, it still chose to act in a low-key manner before figuring out the situation on Earth. Fortunately, the direction of this monster's current voyage is not towards China, but towards the opposite side of the Pacific Ocean, to be precise. The west coast of the United States. According to its current direction, its final landing point will probably be on the beach near San Francisco. Chapter 834. Greasy Stark. Out of humanitarianism, and a certain kind of rubbernecking mentality, Liang Yue, after thinking for a while, still made a phone call to the United States, but it wasn't to the US government or their military forces. Hello, Starkham, Liang Yue, what's up? After the video call connected, a greasy face appeared opposite him. Stark at this time was really greasy, with dark circles under his eyes, sleepy, his face covered in oily sweat that hadn't been washed off. His whole body sunk into the soft mattress, as if he had just pulled 3 all-nighters in a row without closing his eyes. He looked a little dazed all over. "What's wrong with you?" looking at the person opposite. Liang Yue frowned subconsciously. Didn't I just bring back a lot of technical equipment from Xander? I've been very excited lately, and I haven't slept well for a week. What's up, buddy? Hearing this, Stark rubbed his eyelids, barely straightened up, but still looked sleepy. Just yesterday, an unknown civilization opened a space gate in the seabed of the Pacific Ocean. It seems that the newcomers are not friendly, and they sent a monster to Earth, but it was crushed by the water pressure on the spot. Now they have sent a second one, and it has been improved to be more adapted to aquatic conditions. Currently, this monster is heading towards the west coast of the United States, and it is estimated that it will land in San Francisco in a dozen hours. Following Liang Yue's words, the intelligent brain Xiao Wu also sent the corresponding intelligence recording to the Stark family's intelligent housekeeper Jarvis. On the other side also acted very quickly, immediately presenting the corresponding intelligent projection in front of Stark. "Pour me a cup of spirit tea, Jarvis." Hearing this, Stark's expression suddenly became serious, and he became much more serious while rubbing his temples. He tried to widen his eyes and carefully browsed the video intelligence in front of him. After a while, Stark jumped out of bed, patted his cheeks subconsciously, took a few deep breaths, took the spirit tea handed over by the intelligent robot, took a big gulp, and then said with some excitement in his voice, "Prepare our new model, Jarvis. I'm going to San Francisco to fight monsters. I suggest you send the intelligence to the US government, the military, and SHIELD, and then summon the Transformers to discuss it together. You yourself should lie in the biochamber for an hour to recuperate." Looking at the opposite drug tycoon who was ready to go and planned to go into battle himself, Liang Yue smiled at this time and suggested in a timely manner, "My body is not that bad, buddy. Also, don't you want to see my new armor? It was just completed a few hours ago." Hearing this, Stark grinned at him, with a proud look on his face. "Recuperation is just a side effect. This alien invasion is not just your business. There won't be only this one monster. The civilization on the other side of the space channel, although the technological level is far inferior to Xander, it is initially judged that the combat power of that monster should be comparable to that of the alien squad that ran to the vicinity of the Hawaiian waters before. Even if it is destroyed, they can send more monsters at any time. You should prepare your side as an increasingly informed hero. Stark has the same personality as most of his kind, and likes to shoulder heavy responsibilities. This is an excellent quality. But it is also taking risks. Fortunately, Stark at this time has not yet reached that level of heroic complex stage, and can listen to advice. Okay, buddy, you're right. So, you're not planning to take action this time. I will be watching from the sidelines and take action when appropriate. But the governments of various countries should be the main force in fighting against alien invaders. Good morning, I'm already getting excited, buddy. Wow, driving a robot to fight monsters, that's my childhood dream. Then I wish you your dream come true, but are you sure your Iron Man armor has enough ammunition? I can modify it slowly." After chatting for a few words, the video communication was cut off. The monster was still on its way in the sea, walking and stopping along the way, occasionally sticking its head out of the water to observe, and its speed was not slow, but it would take at least half a day to reach the west coast of the United States. At this time, it was not long after nightfall in North America. According to the time calculation, it would probably not be able to reach the shore until dawn tomorrow at the earliest. However, the US officials obviously would not wait until the monster landed before taking action. Counting the development history of their entire country, except for the period when the country was first founded, the mainland of this country has basically not suffered any external blows. The previous battle of the Chitauri crossing the space gate over New York was already a fairly serious external enemy invasion event since the founding of the country, although, because of Liang Yue, the attacks and losses suffered by New York were greatly reduced compared to the original plot. And this time, facing a monster with a size of more than 100 meters, coming from an unknown civilization, the US government, the military, and even SHIELD and other related departments, since they have already received the intelligence in advance, they will definitely not let it land on their own soil easily. At least, they will not allow this monster to wantonly destroy the cities on their own land. Sure enough, after Liang Yue sent the intelligence, the actions of the United States were very rapid. Almost half an hour after he finished a call with Stark, a series of military deployments quickly unfolded. The military bases distributed on the islands around the US Pacific mainland immediately reacted, entered a state of alert. Fighter jets took off. Combat troops began to assemble, The Coast Guard went to sea at the fastest speed, and a large number of early warning aircraft were dispatched. An aircraft carrier fleet that was docked in a certain port on the west coast for repairs also directly entered a state of combat readiness after receiving the order, and after 2 hours of intense loading, it immediately sailed in the direction of the monster. In addition, S.H.I.E.L.D. also attached great importance to the appearance of this monster, and directly flew the sky carrier towards the west coast. The previous trip to Xander was very rewarding for S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury's 100,000 star dollars were nothing. The key was that Natasha received Liang Yue's extra care of 1 million star dollars afterwards. Natasha did not donate the star dollars on her body to the 8-person group left in the United States, but bought all of them into ready-made technical products and related scientific and technological books. I heard that she also bought 2 laser weapons in the black market, but that is single-person equipment, and it should not be used when fighting monsters. Soon, when the time came to around 3 or 4 in the morning, when the monster wandered all the way to the shallow sea area near the North American continental shelf, and the entire figure began to emerge from the sea level, the battle officially began. The U.S. military, the Coast Guard, the shore-based defense artillery, the Air Force, and even the sky carrier suspended high in the sky, which had been prepared for a long time, began to launch attacks on the shadows in the ocean below. However, in the initial stage, the Americans did not choose the large-scale firepower coverage war strike mode that they used with the alien squad in the Hawaiian waters last time. Instead, they tentatively used various high-tech firepower attack methods. For example, large ship-borne electromagnetic guns, shore-based high-heat laser beams, freezing rays, etc. This biological monster weapon manufactured by an unknown alien civilization has become an experimental target for the United States to test various new types of strike weapons. Of course, these various rays, electromagnetic guns, etc., sound very high-end, and they are all colorful and dazzling when they are launched, but in fact, they are basically just the primary technical applications in the field of high concept, and the real power is just like that. Except for making a few bloody holes in the monster's hard armor and muscles, it did not have a one-hit kill effect. Chapter 835 Minimalist Geometric Interlaced Spaceship. Whoosh! On the turbulent sea, just as a hideous head emerged from underwater, a gray shadow, accompanied by swirling air currents, shot over from the distant night sky with a sharp, whistling sound. It struck the giant head squarely on the forehead right between the eyebrows. Not bad aim. Unfortunately, the power was still a bit lacking. Even though this kind of electromagnetic cannon could inflict effective damage on transformers, the steel-bodied mechanical race, it was almost useless against the monster created by this unknown civilization. With a muffled sound, the shell only pierced the monster's forehead skin and muscle, eventually embedding itself in its hard bone. The monster itself only paused slightly, then roared, opening its mouth full of huge fangs, and unleashing an angry roar into the night. AWW whoosh! Unfortunately for it, what followed was a second, fully charged electromagnetic cannon shell. The American military, hiding far away in the darkness, seemed to have anticipated the monster's reaction. An extremely penetrating electromagnetic cannon shell shot over in an instant, directly into its wide-open mouth. As one could imagine, the damage caused by this shell inside the mouth, unprotected by tough armor and bone, would definitely exceed that of a direct hit from the outside. The immense pain caused the monster to squint involuntarily, its entire body staggering in the water, churning up massive waves. But, unfortunately, the electromagnetic cannon's kill radius was too small. Solid shells had strong penetrating power but lacked the explosive lethality of artillery. Therefore, although the shell directly entered the giant beast's mouth, if it couldn't reach the vital organs, the real killing power wasn't that strong. At least, this shell wasn't able to penetrate the monster's mouth and neck. Furthermore, after suffering this attack, the monster seemed to have learned its lesson. Its entire body plunged back into the water, heading forward, swimming quickly towards the land, no longer exposing itself on the surface. Bang! However, that wasn't the end of it. The American military, positioned beyond visual range in the darkness, had obviously prepared other secret weapons for this monster. Accompanied by a seemingly slow-moving ray of light, a bright blue beam suddenly shot down from mid-air, striking the sea surface from an angle in the sky. Instantly, the originally turbulent sea level solidified for hundreds of meters, and swathes of cold air rose continuously into the air. Even though the monster was hiding on the seabed at this time, the bright blue beam had extraordinary penetrating power. Wherever it passed, everything from the water surface to the seabed within 100 meters was frozen. forming an irregular ice pillar that plunged straight into the seabed. Liang Yue was currently monitoring the situation on the battlefield through a panoramic sand table, surrounded by circles of military officers not far away. A group of agricultural experts, as well as the students who had come with them, were also standing on tiptoe, watching with concerned expressions. According to Xiao's detection, the low temperature effect caused by this bright blue beam had reached about -200°C, although it was still a considerable distance from the absolute zero of -273°C, as detected by scientists. Such a low temperature weapon was definitely terrifying for normal life forms in nature now. Facing this monster transported from another dimension, the Americans' use of this unconventional weapon, besides wanting to solve the monster and use it for impact experiments, might also be intended to deter other major powers on Earth. Unfortunately, this secret weapon used by the Americans didn't seem to last long. The freezing beam, which shot down from the night sky at an angle, only lasted for less than 10 seconds before it extinguished itself and the monster below the sea level. Although it was also significantly affected by this and became sluggish, didn't seem to be fatally wounded. A few minutes later, it had successfully broken free from the shackles of ice and continued to swim towards the mainland. If it were a normal creature, after suffering such an attack, even if it wasn't fatal, it most likely wouldn't choose to continue moving forward, but would instead choose another direction to lie dormant temporarily. This monster was obviously different. Although it had a certain degree of biological intelligence, it had come with a purpose. The unknown civilization behind it must have given it some kind of absolute command when it was manufactured. According to the description in the original Pacific Rim plot, after the first monster landed on the North American continent, it was repeatedly bombarded with saturation strikes for 3 full days, eventually barely destroying it at the cost of sacrificing 3 cities. But even after being repeatedly whipped like that, this monster still didn't choose to retreat a single step, still dragging its wounded body and fighting to the death. Tough, durable, and ferocious have always been the hallmarks of this kind of biological weapon. Soon, about 2 more hours passed, although during this period, various ships and flight formations on the sea surface had been repeatedly bombing and driving away the monster on the seabed. It, with a determination in its heart, finally managed to land ashore. As in the original plot, the monster's landing site was in San Francisco, USA, this world-renowned tourist destination. The iconic city of the American West Coast is close to Silicon Valley, the world-famous technology research and development center, densely populated, and economically developed. A scorching energy beam, flashing with a brilliant red light, instantly cut through the night sky, piercing the darkness above this bustling city, and striking the monster's chest directly. The cyan, black scales and thick skin armor were instantly blasted into lava color, and a surge of blue blood mist rose with it. At the same time, the space carrier, which had been quietly hovering thousands of meters above the dark sky, also launched an offensive. At this time, the multi-barreled rapid-fire cannons below the hull instantly rained down, like streams of light falling vertically to the ground, firing thousands of rounds in 2 or 3 seconds. Dong, 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 dong. For a time, earth, rubble, and large swathes of shattered water mist flew in all directions. Accompanied by a cry of pain, the monster suddenly rolled away from the concentrated fire area with a speed that completely belied its massive size. During the process, countless blue blood splattered. After crushing a low-lying port warehouse, its thick limbs thrashed wildly again, and then it crouched down and hid in a group of port buildings not far away. Obviously, it wanted to use the cover of these buildings to check the fire suppression in the dark, making the Americans afraid to act rashly. Just at this critical moment, when they were about to face losses and choices, the Americans suddenly played a clever trick. A semi-large spaceship with a geometric minimalist interspersed style suddenly cut through the night sky and silently arrived above the monster. A pale yellow beam of light shot out instantly, covering the monster directly. Then, the monster suddenly seemed to have been subjected to a body-fixing spell. Wrapped in the beam, its huge body completely unable to move. Only a few seconds later, it was steadily pulled up hundreds of meters into the air, and then it was suspended there, being transferred by the moving ship to an uninhabited desert area in the American interior. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 836 Macaw. Fuck. Seeing the Americans ultimately use this method to capture the monster through the panoramic sand table, The officers and students around Liang Yue were speechless, perhaps out of a mentality of enjoying the excitement. Everyone present showed a bit of disappointment and a hint of loss, unconsciously pacing back and forth. There was no other way. That minimalist geometric spaceship was the one Liang Yue had rented to the Americans before. Besides that, the British also had one, while China had 4 normally. These 6 spaceships were quite busy, each with its own mission, and most of the time they were flying in space conducting various experiments and engineering projects, for example, transporting necessary supplies and various modern equipment to the Asgardian outposts, establishing a base on the moon, mining asteroids, exploring star regions outside the solar system, and so on. That pale yellow beam that confined the entire monster and transferred it to a high altitude was actually a relatively common operational method. Among space civilizations, tractor beam it is generally used to capture asteroids or conduct activities such as interstellar or mining. Previously, China, owning 4 spaceships, had specifically used one ship, under the control of a group of experts and professors, to mine various space ores within the solar system for a period of time. Each trip could bring back tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of tons of materials. Now, using it to confine and capture alien monsters can be considered making the best use of resources and prescribing the right medicine. However, obviously, the military personnel present did not want to see this scene. They would have preferred the Americans to continuously output various firepower means to the monster and then directly defeat the opponent head-on. It would be best to conduct monster fighting operations in a city, so as to assess the threat and destructive power of this alien biological weapon in all aspects, and conduct data collection work from their perspective. Of course, the monster was not dead at this time. After being wrapped and taken away by the tractor beam, it was only transferred to a deserted desert in the American interior. Subsequently, various American military aircraft, cannons, high-tech, space-based aircraft carriers, etc., all went over in a swarm and began a comprehensive, all-round bombardment. Then, after being ravaged by tons of ammunition for most of the day, this extremely miserable monster completely died in anger and frustration. When it died, its entire body was torn apart, blood splattered, and there was almost no good flesh left. Liang Yue and others also witnessed the entire process in the farm through the panoramic sand table. After a simple meal, the officers in the small town took the first-hand video data and flew away in a hurry. It seemed that they were planning to use the battle process between the Americans and the alien monster to study and prevent response plans for similar encounters in the future. Soon, another 3 days passed. During this period, the dimensional passage at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean remained stable, but the unknown civilization on the other side did not send any more monsters to invade. It is not known whether they obtained the intelligence detected by the monster that was previously eliminated by the American military compared to the calmness of the aliens. The Earth was much more lively. The earth-shattering news of monsters landing in North America and being subjected to American-style saturation bombing could not be concealed in this era of satellites flying all over the sky, and the United States seemed to be deliberately allowing the spread of this news. Only half a day after they eliminated the monster, major news media received a unified press release from the U.S. government and military, and solemnly held a press conference and selectively released some of the video files and battle scenes from the scene at that time. In addition, when the monster landed in San Francisco, the cameras at the port scene, as well as some nearby residents, were fortunate enough to capture some of the battle scenes at that time. Although the big guy was quickly transferred to the inland area after landing, it was still dug out by the resourceful media and netizens. Needless to say, once this incident was announced, it immediately occupied the headlines of major media around the world. Various news studios and video websites repeatedly broadcast and reported on this series of video footage, and the discussion was unparalleled. Governments of various countries have frequently spoken out on this matter, especially the island country that is located in the Pacific Ocean, different from the national level's vigilance against alien monsters. Sending people to squat in front of the panoramic sand table all day, staring at the reaction of the space channel, and preparing to properly handle any possible changes. Liang Yue seemed very leisurely at this time. He was welcoming the afternoon sun, leading Kuna, the 3 women, and Meng Xianyu, walking in the farm's greenhouse one by one. The just hatched Bangkok parrots were chirping non-stop under the care of professionals. These little guys were lively and active, as if the whole garden was full of cheerful atmosphere in order to create a comfortable living environment for them. Liang Yue even spawned a small tropical rainforest in this greenhouse. You are really something. Without a word, you have already raised so many parrots. Did you get them from South America? Looking at a few half-grown macaws in the distance, which were already in the molting period and were undergoing the transformation of beautiful feathers all over their bodies, Meng Xiaoyu couldn't help but ask yes, from Brazil. At first, they didn't agree, until I offered a spot to visit Xander next time. They sent me 200 adult and half-grown parrots, plus 4,000 eggs with a successful return of the first batch of alien travelers, and their attempts to plant and use various alien products they bought on Xander. A public opinion and sentiment that is different from the current alien monster invasion has begun to ferment in certain levels of various countries around the world. Various dazzling advanced technologies and rare species have now been initially planted and applied under the careful escort and protection of various countries. And regarding the origin of these alien technologies and alien species, those related countries have not concealed it, but have generously displayed it. After all, the alien products that can be selected and bought by travelers from these small and medium-sized countries are basically ready-made and can be directly applied technologies. Most of them focus on the present and can be applied to certain links in the current economic environment's industrial chain. And there is no need to hide them. Just a seemingly inconspicuous plant, or a small machine box the size of a palm, can greatly affect, or even change, many industrial patterns on Earth. For example, the fuel crystal grass that Princess Xi's bought, once cultivated and planted on a large scale, it can greatly improve the uneven spatial distribution of natural gas on Earth, as well as the trade pattern. The originally solidified interest individuals and interest classes will also undergo drastic changes as a result. More and more powerful figures from various countries on Earth have recognized and confirmed the value of this travel activity, so they try every means and rack their brains to get at least one spot. 4,000 eggs, all hatched successfully. Yes, the batch of eggs prepared for me by Brazil is of good quality. There seem to be a dozen or so little blue macaws over there. Are you planning to open a pet store in China, just raising them for fun? Your behavior may mislead many people. What do you mean? Many people who have been secretly paying attention to you think that you are planning to open a pet store on Xander, and then they are starting to follow suit and prepare to follow the trend. Chapter 837. Develop the Northwest. So, you're planning to transport a batch of pets to Xander and then open a shop to make money? That's right. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Compared to those cosmic civilizations, Earth is still too backward. Our various technologies, industries, and even agricultural products don't have much of an advantage. Only by playing with some unique products can we stand out on the cracks. Selling pets is one such idea. Hearing this, Liang Yue subconsciously scratched his temple and replied with a smile, it's more than that. Ever since the news of your spirit tea selling for 500,000 per tael on Xander reached back here, almost as soon as that batch of people returned to their home countries, some forces started to take action. Although they don't have spirit tea, they've directly targeted the mystical forces in their own or neighboring countries. They hope to find something valuable from them. Even we in Huaxia are actively communicating with forces like Buddhism and Taoism, Meng Xiaoyu said with a serious expression at this time. Although the time since the first batch of travelers returned from outer space was not long, only a little over half a month, she seemed to have learned a lot of secrets from the country's actions. Really? Did they gain anything? After so many wars, how many spirit-level species can still be left in our country? Besides, on Earth now, seeing this, Meng Xiaoyu's face suddenly showed a hint of inquiry, and she asked, yes, ultimately it's still a problem of spiritual energy. You can reach your current cultivation level. You should be able to find the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, right? Yes. Why? Have you ever thought about establishing a sect here and creating a lineage? Head, I've already done the kind of thing like establishing a sect in other worlds, and in more than one place. Can you cultivate in those places? The environment levels are different. One of the places where I established a sect is a somewhat similar ancient world, roughly in the northern Song dynasty of Huaxia, but it contains the heroes of Liangshan. One is a more alternative martial arts world, with dragons and unicorns, and another world, when I went there, it happened to be during World War I. In addition to establishing a sect, I also helped the Huaxia side expand its territory, and now that world has also reached modern times. Then haven't you thought about it, here in our place? Not interested for the time being, HMPH. However, if the country is willing to engage in this kind of orthodox cultivation inheritance, I can provide you with a source of spiritual energy from heaven and earth. A source of spiritual energy from heaven and earth? What is it? Could it be like the water you made, that can keep flowing, almost, but not entirely? After saying that, Liang Yue didn't wait for Meng Xiaoyu to ask anything else. With a flip of his left palm, accompanied by a burst of shimmering green light, a green sapling suddenly appeared in his originally flawless hand. It was precisely that kind of conversion device that could be used to massively breathe in and out the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. As soon as this thing appeared, the void within a meter or two around it was immediately pierced through. Strands of energy substances of various colors, attributes, and levels were immediately attracted and absorbed into the sapling in his palm. A few seconds later, a hazy white, but shimmering with colorful light in the sunlight. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth then rose up. Ah! This is... Meng Xiaoyu widened her eyes at this time, looking at the sapling in Liang Yue's palm, her face full of radiance. In fact, it was not just her. Some of the experts who were originally helping to take care of and cultivate the macaws in the greenhouse, as well as their students, and even Kuna, Tina, and Mirava, who were in the parent pile, all unconsciously looked over here. In addition, perhaps out of the instinct of living things, not only did the people in the greenhouse notice the abnormality here, but even those cultivated macaws, at this time, also followed their feelings and subconsciously looked over here. Some brightly colored mature bodies, half-grown parrots, etc., all flew over, but they didn't dare to get too close, just stopped on the branches of the surrounding trees, quietly staying on the branches, with an expression as if intoxicated, the bird's beak slightly humming. Instinctively panting, absorbing the overflowing spiritual energy of heaven and earth. I have observed a kind of high-level natural treasure for many years. Swallowing energy substances from the surrounding void and spitting out the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is the instinct of this kind of worldly spiritual. After understanding the principle, after many attempts, I finally created this spiritual energy conversion device. Do the other worlds have this kind of thing? Yes, it's been running for many years, and there's never been a problem saying that. Liang Yue gently threw the green sapling in his hand, and the thing immediately flew into the air, left the greenhouse, and flew towards the center of the small city. Finally, it stopped on a pool in the center of the tree-shaped fish pond in the small city. With a thought from Liang Yue, a small island in the center of the lake suddenly rose silently from the pool, and the sapling in the air also took root here. In this way, the cows, sheep, milk, chickens, ducks, fish, and those alien vegetables and fruits in your entire farm will all be nourished by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Right. Another half a day passed, when the night of the northwest descended again, and the stars reflected on the earth next to a bonfire, when the staff in the farm and the temporarily stationed soldiers gathered together again, eating and drinking without tasting. Meng Xiaoyu then came back to her senses from her fantasy and looked at Liang Yue next to her and asked, well, with the nourishment of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, these meats, vegetables, etc. will grow very well, and the quality will be much better than the so-called organic food on the market now. However, compared to real spirit-level species, it is still much worse. Hearing this, Liang Yue continued to bury his head and eat a leg of lamb that Tina helped him roast, and replied without raising his head, even if it can compare to real spiritual energy species, it should still have a very good health effect, right? Meng Xiaoyu heard this and quickly continued to ask, well, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is a very gentle substance, which can subtly improve the quality of all things in the world. These cattle, sheep, plants, etc. will naturally absorb spiritual energy in the process of growth, transforming into some substances that are beneficial to their own growth. Some can also deposit some special medicinal power in the body, most of which are benign reactions. Ordinary people can eat it, and it can indeed strengthen the body. However, as of now, cultivators at Liang Yue's stage have long ceased to value these ordinary species nourished by spiritual energy. Even those various spirit-level fruits and vegetables have already been ignored by him. At this time, enjoying the leg of lamb in his hand is just to occasionally satisfy his appetite. Then what are you going to do with the cattle, sheep, fruits and vegetables in this city? I plan to establish a fresh food chain in major first-tier cities, as well as some places such as provincial capitals, open several stores, specially used to sell these things. You plan to sell it directly? Well, isn't this what was decided when I circled this piece of land in the northwest? If I don't sell it, what am I raising these chickens, ducks, fish and sheep for? Besides, didn't my Airbus logistics company just be established a while ago? Can't you see such an obvious business plan? By the way, do you still have the money I gave you before? Of course, a full 100 billion US dollars. Almost haven't spent much. That's good. Continue to leave this matter to you, and set up this fresh food chain store as soon as possible. Meng Xiaoyu heard this and immediately rolled her eyes. It's not impossible to engage in fresh food sales. I just think it's a bit of a waste. Such a good thing you still want to make it a special supply. It's not all of it, but some share must be left and come and plant it yourselves. Anyway, there is no shortage of land in the great northwest as well as your spiritual energy of heaven and earth enough. A small tree can create a cultivation holy land, and it definitely won't be used to raise the cattle, sheep, fruits and vegetables in this city. That's good, by the way. And my oil tree species. Before, I had already spent most of my wealth and circled a large piece of land next to your small city. It is estimated that the basic infrastructure should be laid in another month or two. Well, you have a head start. Hetty, you said that's such a large area of land. Is it a bit wasteful to only plant that kind of oil tree? Do you have any recommended varieties to plant? Plant medicinal herbs? With the nourishment of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the quality of various herbs will become very good. As for what kind of medicinal herbs to plant, you can ask the experts for their opinions. Yes. Plant medicinal herbs. And it doesn't take up space. You can plant them with those oil trees. Chapter 838. The most powerful person in the country. Soon, another week had passed. During this time, the aliens on the other side of the space gate still hadn't made any new reactions. Liang Yue, on his side, took some time to send Guna and the others back to New York. After all, the three of them were still students and needed to go to school. Besides, as students at a prestigious university, it wasn't easy to take more than a month off. The reason the school agreed to Guna and the others' request for leave was definitely because they had a sufficiently legitimate reason after learning that the three of them would lead a team of donors from their foundation to Xander on a trip more than a month ago. New York University naturally attached great importance to it. After the request to cut in line and squeeze people in to go was rejected, the school turned to second best and arranged some extra vacation assignments for Guna, Tina, and Mirava. Specifically, they were required to be responsible for collecting some seemingly easy, but actually quite critical, intelligence during their trip to Xander. For example, finding some information about Xander's planetary geography, customs, climate, seasonal distribution, temperature, air composition, human customs, economic model, historical records, the development timeline of civilization and so on. In short, if possible. New York University probably wanted Guna and the others to conduct a relatively comprehensive and basic social overview survey of the interstellar civilization of Xander on their behalf. The reason why New York University, or rather the American intellectual class, assigned such a task to Guna and the others was not to find fault or nitpick in their history of development or civilization. It was simply to better understand and study this civilization if possible. They might also want to learn and draw limited lessons from Xander's development history and development model from a more macro perspective. And in Xander, as a planet that focuses on high technology, tourism, and livability. This content is basically openly available on the internet, with free viewing and download services provided. Illustrated, 3D ultra high definition videos. Everything is available. Of course, you don't need to think about Xander's textbooks or anything like that. The copyright for that stuff is also quite expensive. Even if you sell New York University, you may not be able to afford it in this way. In order to be able to continue to successfully ask for a long vacation and travel abroad in more than 2 months, although they inevitably had some small emotions, the three girls still returned to normal campus life. In comparison, Liang Yue has recently had some more troubles because of the matter of the small turquoise tree that was planted before. It has now been written into a report by Meng Xiaoyu and some experts who were present at the time, and submitted to the relevant departments. As a result, only on the second day, the domestic side urgently organized a group of professionals to come to the farm and begin research on the small tree. Among them, there were experts in the field of energy, high-ranking monks and Taoists who had indeed cultivated something, and even the extraordinary people department in the relevant domestic departments. Just like S.H.I.E.L.D. in the United States, Huaxia naturally has its own extraordinary power. However, most of them follow the path of ability awakening, and the rest are highly skilled and well-trained people with some internal strength accumulation, but their realm is not considered high like the Mandarin in the plot, with internal strength cultivation probably reaching the peak level of the acquired realm. There are even very few. However, most of them also have their own unique skills, such as throwing knives, marksmanship, seemingly but not quite, weapons suspected of containing alien technology, and so on. Obviously, in the current real Earth, the general environment does not allow orthodox cultivators to jump too high, not even as good as the DC world. At least over there, there is still a group of masters of the otherworld realm and the innate realm supporting it on the Marvel side. There may also be people in the innate realm, but they did not show up this time. However, although their own cultivation realm is not high, they are still exceptionally fierce and vigorous. Even if they are middle-aged, their spirit is still quite full. Not long after getting off the plane, it seemed to be to establish authority, or something, or maybe they felt that someone was too young, and the previous rumors were all bragging. In short, someone soon found Liang Yue and asked to spar with him by name. Then, Liang Yue naturally wouldn't indulge them one glance over, and immediately caused the young man, who looked about the same age as himself, to dissipate all his power. His whole body slumped to the ground, unconscious after that. Liang Yue once again waved his sleeve and sucked the group of ability users and martial arts masters who had come this time into his palm like ants. He himself seemed to transform into a towering giant, looking down at them, smiling and warning, "Be honest, if you dare to cause trouble, I'll stomp you all to death." After receiving his extra care, this group of people really became much more honest, and even after that, they walked with their heads down when they saw Liang Yue, not daring to overstep or disrespect in the slightest. It's hard to imagine that the organization of Transcendence Master domestically is composed of people at this level. Liang Yue had always thought before that, as an ancient civilization with a long tradition and history, the mysterious power within Huaxia should be more advanced, but since that day, he was somewhat disappointed. For this reason, Liang Yue even specifically asked Meng Xiaoyu, and the conclusion he got was that this was indeed the elite team of the relevant domestic departments. As for whether there were any hidden forces, the answer was definitely yes, but compared to this group of young main force, although those who were a little older had a higher realm and were a little stronger in combat power, they did not exceed a certain limit. In short, there was no combat power that could exceed the foundation establishment stage. This situation was basically the same as when Liang Yue first arrived in the DC world. However, Liang Yue did not completely believe Meng Xiaoyu's words. After all, this world is very mysterious in itself. Although the overall power level is not high, it does not seem strange to occasionally pop out some masters who far exceed the norm. For example, Liang Yue's mother is this kind of situation. Up to now, he himself still can't see the depth of his mother's side, and he doesn't know whether she is a native, a creature from Marvel, or a strong person who ran from another plane to hide from idleness. Chapter 839, Naval Battle A, Land Battle C. It appeared. The underwater space gate is reacting. Along with the loud report of a soldier on duty, many people in the small town refocused their attention on the panoramic sand table under a stone gazebo near the ranch wall. A few minutes later, a group of officers, experts, and superhumans from relevant departments gathered. Of course, Liang Yue, the owner of the place, was also present. However, he had now been relegated to a supporting role, or rather, willingly took on that role, simply standing in front watching the changes on the sand table without saying a word. After all, these monsters were just insects to him now, easily crushed at any time. He could even casually close the space gate at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. But he hadn't done so because he intended to let humanity on Earth experience the atmosphere of an alien invasion and advance. In addition, the unknown civilization on the other side of the space gate had a very unique development path. Monster sieges were indeed a pretty good target for hatred. For the current Earth, a monster has appeared. Looking at its size, it seems to be larger than the one the Americans blew up before, yet it feels like its bones are more prominent, and its muscle tissue is a bit less. It's starting to move. This time, the direction it's chosen is East Asia. Is it coming for us? But we can't rule out the possibility of a changing direction midway. We can't take chances. Immediately notify the higher-ups to prepare to intercept this monster. Also, it's best to dispatch a spaceship to stand by. According to its current speed, it will only take about 4 to 5 hours to reach the vicinity of the East China Sea. The speed is getting faster. It seems that the aliens on the other side of the space gate are likely to continuously upgrade and adjust these monsters. 3 hours later. Quick, look! The monster has turned towards the South China Sea. The final landing point might be the Philippines, but our country's terrain is different from America's. The straight line distance from the eastern coast to the desert is thousands of miles. What if something unexpected happens during this time? Don't worry, there won't be any accidents. This distance is only a few minutes for a spaceship. So, about 5 minutes later, the monster was smoothly transported from high altitude to the western desert, to be precise, the Darien Basin, even further west than Lautner. The monster was dropped directly into the center of the desert from a height of several thousand meters. Given the monster's body structure, it might be able to travel thousands of miles a day in water. But if it were placed on land in the desert, it wouldn't be able to walk out in 10 days or half a month relying solely on its forelegs. This left China with ample preparation time to mobilize its military, operate its weapons, and also take the opportunity to observe how the opponent would react in the desert and hot climate conditions. The current season was midsummer. Although the area of the Taklamakan Desert was not comparable to the Sahara, its harsh conditions were even worse. I don't know if this terrain environment which is a disaster for humans, can be adapted to by the monster soon. About half an hour later, China's firepower was fully assembled. Various rocket launchers, heavy artillery, tanks, armored vehicles, fighter jets, etc., were all ready to go, and drove into a military base in the western region in a mighty manner. 10 Airbus flying cars, which had just come off the production line from a secret manufacturing base in the country not long ago, had also arrived in the sky above the base, carrying various secret weapons. However, they did not attack rashly at this time, but waited for orders, staying in place to observe the monster's reaction. A group of experts and leaders were currently staying far away at Liang Yue's farm in the northwest of Lopner, paying attention to the monster's movements through the panoramic sand table at all times. This monster, which was more than 100 meters long but looked a little thin, was dragging a slender tail behind it, walking slowly in the desert, with all four limbs on the ground. The moving speed was not slow, but it was definitely not fast. There was a slight incoordination between the movements of its feet. It was probably injured when it fell from the sky. Its entire body was covered with thick, cyan black skin, which looked very tough and heavy at a glance. On its spine, there was also a row of thick and hideous bone spurs. Being in the scorching desert, the monster also seemed a little sluggish. In the time of half an hour, it had only walked a few dozen miles. It seems that this thing is indeed a monster that mainly fights in the water. Although it has a certain land combat capability, long-distance raids are not its strength. We can only say that this monster is like this. I heard that when the space gate was first opened, the first monster was crushed by the water pressure as soon as it came over. That one should be good at land combat. That's right. Judging from the current invasion pattern, the aliens on the other side of the space gate should have very strong biological modification capabilities and can continuously improve this biological weapon according to the external environment. I don't know when this will end. If we want to completely defeat them, we can only close the space gate at the bottom of the sea. But with the current level of technological development of our humans, our underwater combat capabilities have always been our weakness, using submarines to fight these monsters in the water. I'm afraid we will suffer losses. Another thing is that we are not sure whether the alien civilization on the other side will reopen it after we close that space gate with violent means. In this way, this may be a long-term war game. Xiao Liang, I don't know if you have any way to solve this alien invasion of the world. Obviously, the group of domestic officials discussing countermeasures in front of the panoramic sand table did not take the monster struggling in the desert seriously, but they seemed a little worried about the foreseeable long-term war of attrition with the aliens. So, after a group of people discussed for a moment, one of the high-ranking elders actually looked at Liang Yue, who was on the side. As his voice fell, everyone present looked at him in unison. It's very simple to solve this invasion. Just wipe out the aliens on the other side together, but I don't want to do that now. Leaving Earth with a common enemy is actually quite good. Chapter 840 Thunder Spear Technique. Liang Yue's response was obviously a bit unexpected by everyone present, and they were speechless for a moment. Of course, they also understood the meaning behind Liang Yue's words. A common enemy, the figure of an extraterrestrial civilization suddenly breaking into the game, could to some extent help the various countries of Earth dissolve many contradictions and unintentionally promote some cooperation. It could even, to some extent, promote some technological advancements in the military field under the current situation. Then Xiao Liang, what do you think we should do to deal with this crisis? An expert group member, over half a century old with a full head of white hair, subconsciously adjusted his glasses on the bridge of his nose at this moment, with a kind smile on his face, but upon closer inspection, he looked at him with a somewhat forced smile. For China, this is not a threat at all. At most it's just a bunch of disobedient targets. Liang Yue heard this and looked at the so-called expert. If he remembered correctly, the old man who was smiling and talking to him was the expert who decided to take all the places from Kuna at a price of $1 million each. That's right. Liang Yue specifically asked Xiao Wu to investigate this matter afterward and learned the whole story. Frankly speaking, places were dispensable to him even when he was in a good mood. He could give away a batch of valuable materials without hesitation. For example, the alien spaceship he captured during the alien naval battle in the Caribbean Sea was directly sent to China by him. But giving is giving, and kindness is kindness. If some so-called experts and think tanks thought that these actions of his had grasped some weakness of human nature and began to take an inch and push their luck, Liang Yue would be happy to teach him a lesson. This matter cannot be generalized. For us, maybe there are ways to contain those monsters, but for other small countries, it can still make their homelands pay a heavy price. The old guy didn't seem to know that Liang Yue actually had opinions about him in his heart, and after hearing his words, he immediately put on a serious look, teaching him and leave this matter to you. Don't you always have a lot of ideas? You can try to deal with the invasion of these aliens from the perspective of human nature. To be honest, Liang Yue didn't quite understand why these people brought this old man with them when they came to his territory. Could it be that his previous expression was not clear enough? Here, young man, it seems you have some opinions about me. The old man was stunned when he heard this, and then looked at him with a smile. Unchanged boy, maybe you don't know, I have been trying to suppress my urge to step on you to death. Liang Yue looked at the other party, and at this time he did not hide his thoughts at all. The originally calm eyes were instantly filled with majesty and tyranny. And the revelation of an invisible emotion instantly triggered a drastic change in the entire world. Crack. So the next moment, in the sky, the lightning hidden in the dark clouds instantly merged into one, turning into a beam of thunder light in the blink of an eye. This beam had swept across the void of hundreds of miles, like a dazzling spear. It pierced through the monster's chest without any obstruction. With a poof sound along with a short and urgent muffled sound, the monster was instantly smashed into a pile of debris, and then directly evaporated by the rolling energy. After that, the lightning spear still did not diminish its momentum and plunged directly into the vast yellow sand below. In the midst of violent silence, a conical crater with a depth of thousands of meters instantly appeared, and large swaths of dust and sand directly turned into fiery red magma droplets. Scattering away the powerful energy flow made everything within the strike range emit dazzling light, becoming blurred, and even with the panoramic sandbox assisted by the intelligent brain Xiao Wu, it was difficult to adapt for a while. Finally, when everything settled down, people suddenly discovered that a circular crater with a diameter of tens of kilometers had directly appeared in the Taklamakan Desert, which was originally a yellow sand. The long slopes around the crater had been almost completely forged into glittering, reddish-colored glaze by the high temperature. At the deepest center of the crater, a spear formed by lightning was quietly inserted obliquely on the glazed rock, without the slightest sign of dissipating. And fortunately, after causing such a blow that created a meteorite crater thousands of meters deep and tens of kilometers in radius, there was no subsequent energy dissipation. I don't quite understand what you are trying to do by bringing this little hooligan who has infiltrated the team since the special era to my place. Get out, and if there is another provocative act like this, our cooperation will end here. Saying that, Liang Yue, without waiting for the people in front of him to refute or defend themselves, waved his hand directly, as he did last time, and invited the group of experts, officers, soldiers, transcendents, and high-level officials around the sandbox out of the small city and threw them onto the apron outside the city gate. Of course, not everyone was driven out by him. The soldiers who helped guard and maintain the farm's operation during the previous period, the few high-achieving monks from the Buddhist and Taoist families who had practiced a bit of fame in the harsh environment, and Meng Xianwei, who had been standing on the periphery of the crowd, was left in place. This time you're really something. Meng Xianwei, who had recovered from the shock, walked up to him with bright eyes at this time, squinting at him while aiming hard at the panoramic sandbox. That spear, is that your weapon? Can it summon the power of thunder and lightning? The power looks comparable to a nuclear bomb. This is just an ordinary Taoist magic. After the realm of cultivation is high, the power of the magic will naturally increase. Liang Yue responded casually when he heard this. While speaking, his eyes had unconsciously looked to the west. His gaze was crossing the great northwest of China, constantly moving towards the west, and in the blink of an eye, he had noticed the suburbs of London, Britain, far away. Not a weapon, the materialization of Taoist magic directly converting energy into matter, almost a little stronger than a casual blow. This kind of Taoist magic that can directly create such a big pit on the ground is only a little stronger than a casual blow. I've already restrained myself. Otherwise, the earth would be directly pierced. Tisk tisk. Speaking of which, although there is a big desert there and there are no people, don't you think it's ugly to leave such a big pit there? There is an underground lake more than 800 meters underground, with a considerable storage capacity. You can try to dig a passage there, which should be able to fill a lake. Really, the source should be the melted snow from the Kunlun Mountains and Shianshan Mountains. Xiaowu, I want the underground water vein map there. Chapter 841 Reality Gem. At the same time, just as Meng Xiaoyu was excitedly shifting her attention to the deep pit blasted out by Liang Yue's thunder spear technique, eagerly observing the underground water veins of the entire western Great Basin, far away on the other side of the Eurasian continent, in Britain, specifically the London area, a significant change was unfolding as the moment when the 9 planets on the world tree's trunk aligned and converged drew nearer. A series of strange phenomena began to occur on this land. The renowned astronomy professor and mentor, Eric Selvig, had been confined to a mental hospital by relevant authorities for a long time due to the influence of the Mind Stone during the Chitauri invasion of Earth. Although the old professor had subsequently broken free from the mind control, he had been behaving strangely recently, possibly due to lingering effects. He would occasionally make headlines on live news channels due to some bizarre behavior, for example, running around naked in the streets of London, making a big fuss, and so on. As for his student, Jane Foster, who was also a professor in the field of astronomy, she had been feeling particularly depressed lately because her alien prince and Thor boyfriend had broken the promise and failed to return to Earth to be with her, especially since, during the last Battle of New York, Thor had clearly returned to Earth, but after fighting the aliens, he went straight back to Asgard. Although she knew that he might have had other reasons for doing so, some unavoidable difficulties, it only made her feel more suffocated and short of breath. In addition, Jane Foster had also been responsible for taking care of her mentor, Professor Selvig, who often acted strangely due to mental confusion. Caring for a mentally unstable patient was already not an easy task, and on the other hand, she had to continue juggling her own research projects, so she had been feeling very depressed lately. Fortunately, she had her students by her side, as well as the intern that her students brought. One gloomy afternoon, Jane Foster, as usual, drove the other two to the suburbs to observe the abnormal spatial conditions in the London area these days using self-made scientific instruments. By the way, the astronomers of Eric Selvig's lineage were all-rounders. In addition to being able to observe various natural phenomena in strange spatial fields on a daily basis, they were also very capable with their hands. Often, with just a few simple small parts and a few simple laptops, they could easily assemble a series of observation machines in the fields of astronomy, space, etc., that were enough to lead the world. They could even, to a certain extent, control space transmission with camera rods and so on. If it were other experts in related fields on Earth, they probably wouldn't be able to produce such treasures in several lifetimes. On this day, Jane Foster once again discovered a spatial anomaly through an instrument in her hand that was not much bigger than a mobile phone. And this time the reaction seemed particularly intense, so, after entrusting Professor Selvig to the nurses for care, she rushed to an abandoned factory in the suburbs in a hurry. Unfortunately, the instrument in her hand could only pinpoint the range of the anomaly, but with just the naked eye, Jane Foster and her party did not have the ability to find the source of the spatial reaction. But coincidentally, just then, a few teenagers who had obviously skipped school to play happened to be pushing their bicycles past them, excitedly discussing a magical place. Okay, Liang Yue, who was currently in northwest China, at his own small-town farm, couldn't bear to watch the various coincidences during this period. The next moment, a bright blue halo suddenly rose from his body, and after a moment of, his whole body turned into a faint phantom and disappeared in place. When he reappeared, he had already arrived at this factory in the suburbs of London. Regarding Jane Foster, although he disliked her very much, as an important character in the Thor 2 plot, Liang Yue had actually been paying close attention to her since very early on, especially after she arrived in London. A trace of Liang Yue's mental thoughts had always landed on her body. This was also one of the main reasons why Liang Yue had been staying in reality recently, but always felt a little idle. As for the reason for anchoring her, it was very simple. He was determined to master the Reality Stone. Jane Foster, as the temporary host of the Reality Stone in the Thor 2 plot, was related to the beginning of the entire plot line. If he could take the stone before she came into contact with a Reality Stone, he would naturally be able to avoid a lot of trouble. As for the subsequent invasion of the Dark Elf race, to be honest, without the blessing of the Reality Stone, the remaining forces of the Dark Elves, and their leader Malekith, were simply not taken seriously by Liang Yue. With a flash of his figure, Liang Yue had already arrived in an indoor stairwell deep in the factory building as a cultivator who possessed powerful spatial power, possessed spatial supernatural powers, and had a relatively deep understanding of spatial rules. Liang Yue was not like those mages in the local magic temple, who, once such a special moment of the Nine Realms convergence occurred, disturbed the space, and could not accurately cast space channels and other magic. In fact, the Nine Realms convergence was just a natural phenomenon, disturbing only the power of space. But the impact on the rules was minimal, and the laws of space had always been eternal and would not be damaged by such a phenomenon. When a cultivator had thoroughly studied the rules, the fluctuations caused by this phenomenon would no longer be able to affect themselves. Although Liang Yue didn't dare to say that he had studied the laws of space to a very high degree, he was still able to skillfully shuttle freely on Earth without relying on, or rather, not relying too much on the small-scale spatial rules like the Earth mages. Well, let's get back to the topic. As a great cultivator whose cultivation had reached the pinnacle of the human world, Liang Yue's appearance was naturally not something that ordinary people like Jane Foster, and the crude instruments in her hand, could detect upon arriving at this abandoned factory in the suburbs of London. He had already been able to clearly observe the source of the spatial anomaly here. It was right below the stairwell atrium where Liang Yue was at this moment, so, the next moment, Liang Yue did not hesitate, and with a light tap of his feet, his whole body turned into a gust of breeze and plunged into this space crack. From the moment he appeared at this abandoned factory in the suburbs of London to the moment he entered a different space crack, the whole process took less than half a second. Truly without anyone noticing. Chapter 842 Dark Elves. This is a dark and gloomy cave. The cave meanders and twists, the light is dim, and there are many ancient buildings within. The air carries a hint of decay and rot, obviously sealed for many years, but the composition of the air is not much different from that of Earth originally. It should have been a small subspace connected to Earth, but it was forcibly hidden away. Judging from the faint magic fluctuations in the cave, this should be the work of Asgard. In the original plot, the Asgardians and the Dark Elves fought for many years, and both sides suffered heavy losses. Finally, Odin's father, Bor, achieved a surprise victory, using the Rainbow Bridge's long-range teleportation in the midst of the chaos to seize the ether. The treasure passed down through generations of the Dark Elves, which is also the Reality Stone. And the Dark Elves were defeated in this war and were slaughtered. The Reality Stone was hidden in this hidden subspace and sealed until, during the once-in-millennia convergence of the 9 realms, Jane Foster brought it out of the sealed land and back to the world of the 9 planets. The remaining forces of the Dark Elves, hiding in the dark and dormant, seem to have some kind of mysterious connection with their ancestral treasure, the ether, and can sense it even in hibernation. So soon, the Dark Elves, awakened from their slumber, began to retaliate against the Asgardians. However, this time, Liang Yue is here. Ether. This is already the 4th Infinity Stone that has passed through my hands. As soon as he entered the subspace in the space crack, Liang Yue quickly found the trace of the Reality Stone in the center of a special stone pillar. At this time, the gem, like a lump of glowing red mud, meanders and slowly moves in the cracks of the stone sealed by magic from Asgard. It has been unable to break free from the stone pillar in front of it for a long time, not because the seal is strong, but because after losing artificial control, the gem becomes a dead thing. After all, although the Reality Stone is a collection of original ruled energy, it has not generated its own will. It is even unable to use its own power independently for most of its life. It can only be like a passive socket. Others plug in, it generates electricity, others attack, it counterattacks, others don't move, it can't move either. Of course, after being owned by the Dark Elf clan for many years, this Reality Stone has been passively transformed. To a certain extent it can be said that the ether is the Reality Stone, but the Reality Stone is not the ether. It's not a question of which is stronger or weaker, they are essentially the same thing, but after being served and transformed by the Dark Elves for countless years, the gem has been subjected to some kind of secret spell, and according to the Dark Elves' own understanding of magic, technology, and the world, a shell has been artificially put on it. It's like a computer with an application installed, which can, to a certain extent, use the Reality Stone for certain applications according to specific process logic. At the same time, this application itself also has some other functions, such as early warning, information transmission, erosion of life, and so on. These are all a layer of shell that the Dark Elves have endowed on the Reality Stone over a long period of time. In order to match this shell, the shape of the gem has also become a fluid. Of course, as a treasure in the Marvel Universe in front of us, what form is not important to the Infinity Stone. With the continuous deepening of the perspective of observing all things in the world, Liang Yue at this time has already been able to understand the essence of things from the quantum level. Moreover, if he is willing, he can also remove the shell put on by the Dark Elves at any time, and restore the gem to its original solid gemstone appearance from the microscopic level. However, Liang Yue didn't do that for the time being. Instead, according to the general process, he gently beckoned to the ether in the stone crevice and gathered it into his palm, turning it into a round fluid ball that kept flashing dark red brilliance. From this moment on, the gears of fate began to turn again. Afterwards, Liang Yue walked out of this space crack while observing this magical substance with the ether ball in his hand. Just as he stepped out and returned to normal Earth space, he saw Jane Foster and her party rushing towards here excitedly. After thinking about it, Liang Yue turned his head again and waved his hand at the subspace behind him. The space that was originally in the crack was immediately cut out by him. The real volume was dozens of square kilometers. The cave ruins, which were like a maze, instantly turned into the size of a palm and were held in his palm. Afterwards, this miniature subspace, like a semi-transparent little flower flashing with gray luster, fluctuated in his palm with light and shadow. What is that? At this time, Jane Foster had already led the few people behind her to trot over, quickly looking at Liang Yue's appearance with a dark red liquid ball in one hand and a semi-transparent little flower in the other. Obviously having gained something, she subconsciously ran up in terms of tone. It is hard to say whether it is an inquiry, a greeting, or an interrogation. To be honest, Liang Yue has never known where the charm of this woman lies. That she can fascinate the dignified Prince of Asgard so much. Liang Yue just glanced at her indifferently. The next moment, he put the two things in his hand into his backpack space and walked forward on his own. After a few steps, the bright blue halo around his body surged for a while, and then the whole person disappeared into this abandoned factory. When he reappeared, he had already returned to his own small-town farm in northwest China at this time. Only a dozen seconds had passed since Liang Yue left before. Meng Xiao was still concentrating on checking the groundwater map of the Northwest Basin, muttering to herself from time to time on the large spaceship parking apron outside the city. A group of people who had been thrown out of the farm by him were still busy calling relevant departments and their direct leaders. The expressions on their faces were different: helpless, angry, complicated, and cursing. Unfortunately, no one cared at all. After a while, several Buddhist and Taoist figures who had been studying the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and practicing in the farm all came together, perhaps after seeing Liang Yue send away a group of people representing relevant departments before. They felt that the existence of the group was not very safe, so they came to discuss with him, hoping to continue to stay in this small city and study the wonderful uses of these spiritual energies, saying it's research. In fact, most ancient inheritances have many methods of cultivating the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. But later, with the changes of the times, the general environment gradually entered a low ebb. Many exercises that adapted to the original level of spiritual energy environment could not be practiced one after another. In addition, under the long-term evolution, dynasties changed, celestial disasters occurred, wars and man-made disasters, etc., and many classic ancient books left by the predecessors were destroyed. Some secret traditions that needed to be passed down by word of mouth had already disappeared. Now, wanting to use the spiritual energy environment here in Liang Yue to regain the lost cultivation methods in the past disasters is probably not an easy task. Of course, in this world, there has never been a shortage of experts in any force with real skills. Even in special times, under the impact of the so-called torrent of humanity, there are still many exceptions. Liang Yue wants to see how many unknown experts and profound skills are hidden in the Chinese side in this Marvel mixed world, which is as famous as the DC universe. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 843, Returning Home. Quickly, another day passed as the moment of the 9 great worlds' convergence became increasingly apparent. Strange phenomena began to appear in various parts of Earth. Among them, the most special was naturally London, the central location of this world convergence. At this moment, the sky above London was gathering clusters of oval, nebula-like special space channels. They manifested in the sky, lined up in rows, reflecting scenes from different worlds and star fields. Some of these space channels reflected a sea of stars, while others faced an unfamiliar land. Through high-powered telescopes, one could even vaguely see forests and animals within. Thus, this rare celestial phenomenon, unseen for thousands of years, immediately ignited the entire public opinion field upon its appearance, and this phenomenon was so openly displayed in the sky that it could not be hidden at all. The government, naturally, hoped to quickly quell the various discussions and panic among the people, and tried its best to promote the idea, bringing in several familiar faces from the field of astronomy to guide public opinion. They presented a unified front, explaining to the public that it was just a rare astronomical phenomenon that would disappear on its own after a while. Of course, it was indeed an astronomical phenomenon, but in secret. They were quickly preparing various emergency plans and military actions. Some relevant individuals even directly called Liang Yue while inquiring about the cause of this situation. They also hoped that he could step in to help resolve any potential crises when necessary. In response, Liang Yue briefly explained the existence of the World Tree and the connection between Earth and the other 8 great worlds, and naturally casually agreed to the request to help when necessary. Unlike the peculiar civilization on the other side of the space gate under the Pacific Ocean, which only knew how to send monsters to Earth, The Dark Elves of the Nine Great Worlds were a proper developed race. In addition to having their own magic system, their technology was also quite advanced. Whether it was their spaceships or their personal weapons and equipment, they were all very worthy of research. Even a seemingly casual black hole grenade hanging on the waist had powerful destructive power. Liang Yue naturally did not want to miss these good things that clearly belonged to the level of black technology. Elizabeth, I'm here. Are you finally coming over? I don't have that plan yet. I'm going to go through the great tribulation in reality before going over. How are things on your side? We are currently traveling around the great Jin dynasty in the mortal realm. Bao Yun and the others have also come over, but many people have been left behind in the base in Xianan. With cultivation levels around the nascent soul stage, most of them were left there to manage the base and establish connections with other sects. By the way, we also discovered an ancient seal in the boundless sea of Xianan. It seals some true devil key, which is said to be something left behind from the ancient demon world invasion. It will erode the spiritual energy environment of the mortal realm, so we solved it casually unexpectedly, after the seal was broken, an archipelago appeared, and the spiritual energy environment there is considered relatively high level in the mortal realm. We have now established a branch base there. It's a pity that the geographical location is too remote. Otherwise it could be fully operated as the main base. I know that place. Also, I heard that there is also a Mount Kunwu in the Great Jin Dynasty, which was also a cultivation holy land that cultivators in the mortal realm had to seal off in ancient times in order to solve the demon invasion. Your information is quite accurate. Speak, since you don't want to come in yet. There must be something going on, right? During this period, the 9 great worlds are running parallel in reality, and time and space are intertwined. Some strange phenomena have appeared on Earth, with the epicenter in London. As far as I know, a group of aliens will invade there, and it will happen in the next few days. Then why don't you just solve it? Do you also find it tricky? It's not tricky. I just wanted to ask if you are interested in going back to your hometown since your old home is being invaded by aliens. Alright, I really have to go back and take a look. Why would he ask Elizabeth to come back when Liang Yue alone could handle the situation? The reason is simple, returning home in glory. After all, Britain is the homeland of this English King's Branch family's noble lady. When it comes to protecting her hometown, no one is more suitable than her. Elizabeth has been at Liang Yue's house for more than a year now. Although she has not temporarily completed any missions through the heavens with him, she has been in the public world for a full century, and even practiced for tens of thousands of years during the previous torrent of time. Not to mention her cultivation base is heaven-defying, but she is a proper Mahayana cultivator. In this situation, it is naturally very necessary to go home and walk around. Swish. A moment later, accompanied by a soft glow, a group of figures instantly appeared next to Liang Yue. Upon closer inspection, it was Elizabeth, Nana, Yang Buhu, Hinata, and Non Lixiang among them. Next to Elizabeth, her pet forest child, an 8th order magic beast, the plant-type magic beast White Deer Soren, was proudly standing beside her with his head held higher on his pair of intricately branched horns. Liang Yue's pet, the void spirit butterfly Yuling Long, which possessed 9th order bloodline, was also quietly standing there. In addition, Hinata was also holding a Sign Wind attribute magic beast Mink in her arms, and surprisingly, there was another figure standing next to Non Lixiang at this time. It was Asuka, who had followed him back from the New Century Evangelion world as a native after feeling Liang Yue's gaze. This beautiful girl, who was no longer what she used to be, naturally waved to him with a generous look. The image of the mentally ill girl from back then was completely gone. This was also natural. After all, Asuka has grown up at this time during the torrent of time back then. This woman also followed from beginning to end, actively cultivating and striving, transforming from an ordinary problem girl into a powerful cultivator. After a full 10,000 years of precipitation and accumulation, Asuka has now steadily entered the integration stage. Chunkyu. Coming. Here, is this the result of your efforts during this period? Yes, I opened a farm in the northwest desert of China and planted many alien crops. This place is not very big. I thought your farm would be 10 times bigger. It's not that easy to contract land in the country. That low-lying gravel beach in the south should be the original Lopner, right? Why not just restore it? That was the plan originally, but some unpleasant things happened in the middle, so the plan was shelved. It seems that the situation in your country is a bit complicated. That's right. According to your past reputation, there should be no conflicts. At least maybe it's because I'm too strong, so I'm being vigilant indeed. In fact, the more powerful and well-organized countries are, the less they need people like us. I heard that Nizi is not very popular with her family now. It's not that she's not popular, It's just that I heard that some of the old guys in her family don't want her to get involved in the family's power, lest she overstep her boundaries or something, but when it comes to asking for some alien technology, they don't hesitate at all. Chapter 844 Spicy Shredded Chicken. After a period of small talk, Elizabeth and the others naturally didn't forget their mission upon returning, so they casually took out a panoramic sand table to check the situation in London. Unfortunately, with the 9 realms juxtaposed and space-time distorted, even the black technology detection methods of the intelligent AI, Xiao, seemed to be significantly affected, especially the skies above London and certain areas within the city were now a hazy grey. Looks like the situation isn't good. Enough chatter, sisters, let's go. Seeing this, Nanlixiang raised an eyebrow, and with a wave of her sleeve, a spatial passage appeared beside her, connecting to a shimmering ocean. Is this space-time distortion affecting even the spatial gates? The Earth Mage's opening spells rely too much on spatial laws. Slight fluctuations can easily cause inaccurate spatial coordinates. Upon seeing this, Liang Yue waved his hand lightly at the spatial gate. The other side spun and shifted through time and space, and they arrived in a bustling metropolis through the glow of the morning sun. They could already see some of London's iconic buildings in the distance. Seeing this, each of them led their respective pets through the spatial gate, directly arriving in this bustling urban area from the lush, cattle-filled small-town farm. This is Greenwich. Elizabeth looked around and quickly recognized the specific location of this area. This is the central area reflected on Earth during the current juxtaposition of the 9 realms. The space is unstable, and even gravity fluctuates. As he spoke, Liang Yue suddenly seemed to sense something, and his gaze turned to a square not far away, adjacent to a forest and a lake. There, a T-shaped spaceship was slowly emerging from a spatial rift connecting to another world. The ship's long, narrow lower edge was like a blade, cutting through the lake's surface and stirring up rolling waves. The collision with the water caused the originally cloaked spaceship to reveal its outline. Subsequently, the Dark Elves simply stopped disguising themselves and directly deactivated the ship's cloaking mode, proceeding along the lake's surface, scraping the ground. It plowed a deep trench in the hard concrete layer. The people who were leisurely strolling in the square were suddenly thrown into chaos when they saw such a giant spaceship, nearly 200 to 300 meters long, appearing. They screamed and fled in all directions. Is there any way to enclose that spaceship for me? When the fighting starts later, don't harm the innocent, and preferably don't cause any serious damage. Elizabeth, who had already arrived in the sky, stared at the trench plowed by the T-shaped spaceship's lower edge in the square below. Narrowing her eyes, she subconsciously wanted to use special magic to confine the entire area into a mirror dimension, but then she thought about the current environment of space-time distortion and turned her pleading gaze to Liang Yue beside her. Liang Yue rolled his eyes upon hearing this, thinking that this little girl had a lot of requests. However, he still followed her request. Raising both hands and quickly erecting a mirror dimension around the area compared to the special spells used by Earth Mages on a daily basis to avoid collateral damage, the one that Liang Yue was using at this moment was clearly different. There is an old Chinese saying, "One force can overcome 10 skills." The space that Liang Yue was creating at this moment actually followed this concept. With his own great magic power and understanding of spatial rules, he forcibly established a mirror world in the surrounding area without relying on the rules of the general environment. It only followed his own understanding of spatial laws, using his own magic power to withstand the external world's space-time distortion. He constructed such a special space Xiao while casting the spell. Liang Yue didn't forget to instruct the intelligent AI, Xiao, to cut off the enemy's retreat, infiltrating the enemy's spaceship. Estimated time to take control of the spaceship is 3 minutes. Please wait patiently, Master. After the mirror dimension was erected, it was as if several gray walls had been constructed in the surrounding space, confining the space within a dozen miles. In the middle, the scenery looked no different from before, only as if it were covered with a slightly hazy glass, but in reality, this place was no longer in the same space as the real Earth. Everything that happened here would not affect the outside world. The Dark Elves were obviously knowledgeable and may not have seen such a battle formation for the first time. Therefore, at the first moment of being surrounded, they immediately started the spaceship, turned around, and wanted to escape directly. Relying on the Dark Elves' research on spatial theory, they might actually have a chance to break Liang Yue's mirror dimension and escape. Of course, there was only that possibility. Moreover, under the circumstances of space-time distortion, even if they escaped, the greatest possibility was that they would only escape to some unknown place. In short, the exit was not fixed. However, Liang Yue had already taken precautions and had Xiao infiltrate the enemy's spaceship one step ahead of time. Soon, After a moment of stalemate, which only lasted a minute or two different from the original plot, this time the reality stone, which the Dark Elves called ether, did not pass through Jane Foster's body for transit. As for whether that woman was taken to Asgard by Thor as in the original plot, that was not something Liang Yue cared about. In short, the stone was now in his hands, and it had not passed through Jane Foster or gone to Asgard. Therefore, although the Dark Elves were still full of hatred for the Asgardians, under the premise that the first goal was to retrieve the ether, they did not attack Asgard itself as in the original plot. Earth Mage, did you take away my clan's inherited secret treasure? At this time, Malekith slowly stepped out from among the Dark Elves, who were guarding him, and said in a deep voice, looking at Elizabeth and her group, "Are you talking about this thing?" At this moment, Liang Yu's figure flashed, and he appeared in front of the women. At the same time, he flipped his palm and took out the red mud that he had rolled into a ball from the backpack space. "It's the ether." The opposite Malekith immediately widened his eyes when he saw this thing, his eyes filled with excitement and desire. Then, he stretched out a hand, seemingly wanting to use the tacit understanding that the Dark Elves had cultivated with a reality stone for many years to summon it from someone's hand. At this time, Liang Yue did indeed sense a force wanting to fly away from the gem in his palm, but unfortunately, this red mud was still forcibly kept in his palm by him with gravity control. "It seems that your attraction to it is not strong enough." Looking at the somewhat astonished look on Malekith's face, Liang Yue smiled and casually put the gem back into his backpack space. "Go, take back the ether." As the leader of the Dark Elves, Malekith immediately roared angrily, pointing at Liang Yue. At the same time, another hand hidden behind his back quickly pulled open the safety ring of a black hole grenade with a secret technique and threw it towards Liang Yue. Chapter 845 Black Hole Grenade. Seeing Spicy Chicken Shred's sudden attack, Liang Yue wasn't surprised after all. The difference in strength between the two was too great. Whether it was speed, strength, mental power, observation, or divine sense probing, he was many levels higher than the opponent, not even on the same level. Even the entire process of Spicy Chicken Shred's throwing the grenade was like slow motion in Liang Yue's eyes, completely lacking any element of surprise in this situation. If Liang Yue was still caught off guard, he wouldn't be able to continue in the future. However, facing the bomb thrown by the opponent, Liang Yue still appeared very cautious. According to his observation and speculation, black hole grenades are essentially a temporary, extremely small black hole created in the void by some special means. Then, relying on the weapon's powerful attraction, it inflicts crushing blows on the enemy. Even if the target of the attack is strong enough to withstand the repeated ravaging and crushing of the powerful gravity, it will still be exiled to any location in this universe. Facing this kind of black hole grenade attack, there are basically only two ways to deal with it: dodge or withstand it head-on. Most people would choose the first option, but Liang Yue chose to face it head-on. I don't know if he can withstand the crushing of the black hole with his body, which is not much stronger than an ordinary person. At the same time, the moment Liang Yue blocked the grenade, Elizabeth next to him also moved, also raising a palm. Thousands of wind blades suddenly shot out of thin air, and then instantly formed a small tornado, surrounding the 100 or so Dark Elves on the opposite side and compressing them inward in a swirling motion. Then, Nanlixiang waved her hand and scattered a handful of silver, glittering flying needles, as thin as cow hair and extremely fast, like tracking missiles, a dozen in a group, attacking a target together. Nana, who specializes in the laws of the earth, raised her fair little hand, and hundreds of smooth and slender stone cones suddenly emerged from the originally solid ground. Hinata directly summoned a special energy light ball from the void, waved her finger, and the light ball suddenly slammed into the opposite side like a meteorite, causing a violent explosion. With a sense of weight in comparison, Asuka was obviously a little slow to react. A huge wave of magic power surged from her body, and a large Asuka Dharma form nearly 100 meters tall rose from behind her. As a result, just as she raised her head, the enemy had already been wiped out by the previous waves of attacks. "That's it, I haven't even used my strength yet, and you're already down. Those few in the spaceship, all your people are dead. Now I'll give you two choices: die with them, and the Dark Elves will be exterminated, or surrender to me, and I will give you generous treatment." The target of Liang Yue's call was naturally the few technicians who were left on the spaceship by Spicy Chicken Shreds to continue fighting Xiao Wu for control. Unfortunately, their resistance was in vain. Under the control of the intelligent brain Xiao Wu, there was no room for resistance at all. Liang Yue didn't want to really exterminate a once glorious cosmic race, so he issued a call for surrender. After a few minutes of consideration, the few Dark Elves remaining on the spaceship, as well as dozens of women from the clan, finally chose to compromise and surrender, and walked off the spaceship dejectedly. Liang Yue didn't make things difficult for this group of people either. He directly incorporated them into the base world as indigenous people, and threw the spaceship into Xiao Wu's experimental base. Frankly speaking, the technology of the Dark Elves is still very advanced. It feels like it shouldn't be much worse than the Kryptonian technology in the DC world. Unfortunately, the individuals of this race are not as lucky as the Kryptonians, and they don't have the ability to absorb sunlight to become stronger. Their combat power is very weak. Their research and development of various weapons and combat equipment is even inferior to that of humans on Earth. Their combat concept is still stuck at the level of World War I, holding guns in their hands, grenades hanging on their waists, and charging forward in rows. It can be regarded as fearless and brave in battle, but facing transcendence like Liang Yue and others, they can only be reduced to dimensionality reduction strikes. After solving the Dark Elves, this series of events caused by the parallel of the 9 worlds and the space-time distortion naturally came to an end. At least in London, nothing major should happen again, so Liang Yue directly returned to his small-town farm. Elizabeth took the young ladies around her to visit her home. After all, it was a rare opportunity to come back. The time span of this common plane of the mortal world is basically calculated in thousands or tens of thousands of years. Calculating the time, although the women and a group of disciples under Liang Yue only entered for a dozen or 20 years, it is indeed a good experience to occasionally come back and walk around and stroll through modern cities. System: I want to draw a lottery, the unlimited level kind. After returning to his farm, Liang Yue subconsciously scanned the surrounding area of the small town with his divine sense and found that everything was normal. Opposite the spaceship parking lot, a group of domestic construction teams are working feverishly, working overtime to construct and build. It seems that the relevant departments want to build a complex of buildings that meet their vision of a spaceport. Management and operation departments, and related supporting institutions there, according to the highest standards of domestic construction. The architectural style is mainly practical. Well, to be precise, it's ugly, even under the backdrop of the winding river, desert valley, and forest created by Liang Yue. It cannot be saved. I don't know who designed such a plan. It's hopeless. In comparison, the series of buildings in Liang Yue's small-town farm have been completely renewed after this period of development and transformation. The template factories, dormitory buildings, etc., that Meng Xiao originally ordered from some prefabricated building companies have now been completely transformed by the intelligent brain Xiao Wu according to the architectural style of the Great Xia Kingdom in the base world. The branch upgrade version of Chinese classical architecture, plus the application of various ultra-era technological materials, is beautiful, generous, elegant, and comfortable. In contrast, it is really dwarfed, at this time. The intelligent brain Xiao Wu, who can't stay idle, has already started to work on the city walls on the edge of the farm. The city wall was originally just a wall that Liang Yue temporarily built to enclose land, divide the sphere of influence, and incidentally block the invasion of strong winds, dust, and various foxes, wolves, and other creatures. Although the raw material is just the sand and soil of the desert, it has undergone a qualitative change after his mana transformation. From a distance, it looks like a permanent building built with high-quality light yellow concrete. The slightly angled city wall, more than 10 meters high and 5 or 6 meters wide, gives people a sense of indestructibility. Xiao Wu now seems to want to put a half-meter thick metal plate on the city wall, and then transform the area near the 4 city gates into gatehouses or something. Chapter 846 Summoning Book. System: I want to draw a prize. As soon as Liang Yue's words fell, a familiar lottery turntable immediately popped up in his sight. However, unlike the monthly routine lottery, the base of the unlimited level lottery was obviously more gorgeous. The golden disc, the red pointer, and the treasures with different brilliance evenly distributed within each selection on the disc, made people couldn't help but want to explore it at first glance. However, someone who had many lottery experiences, even at his current cultivation level of the tribulation stage, the pinnacle of the human world, still couldn't grasp the pattern of this seemingly simple lottery turntable. Therefore, after just subconsciously glancing at the various prizes on the turntable, Liang Yue simply rushed past and got to the point: start-stop. This unlimited level lottery opportunity was naturally obtained when he upgraded the 7th level system authority before. However, when Liang Yue completed the authority upgrade before, he had always focused his attention on the 10,000 years of closed-door hard cultivation in the torrent of time. Later, after the long retreat ended, the arrival of the mortal world, this public plane, distracted him again, and the unlimited level lottery was forgotten. But it's not too late now. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a special item in this unlimited level lottery, a diamond level summoning book, which comes from a high level fantasy world. With this treasure book, you can open the summoning talent for talented people, and you can contract with any race other than the human race and accept them as war pets. At the same time, it will build a life guardian war beast for the host. The success rate of contracting war pets depends on the strength and state of the master of the treasure book and the target of the contract, as well as the level of the summoning book itself. The treasure book can be upgraded, and the number of war pets that can be summoned and contracted depends on the level of the treasure book. The treasure book has its own internal space world and has the potential to grow into complete worlding. Because the host himself does not belong to the individual of the plane to which the treasure book belongs, after the system transformation, the creatures summoned and contracted after the treasure book completes the ownership contract with the host will no longer be limited to its original plane. This is not only because, in the system's introduction and his own memory, he found the precious effect of this special product under the special rules of some worlds, even more because Liang Yue saw the uniqueness of this treasure book from another angle, or rather, from the level of runes summoning, contracting, linking, cohesive space, evolvable, and can also grow into a complete world with its own upgrades, and even the unique special rule environment inside the world, which is especially suitable for the growth of war pets. The composition of these unique laws involves a series of complex and mysterious rune combinations and construction systems. The value of this summoning book, for him at this time, is definitely not just a special treasure that can be used to contract and summon war pets. It is also another system, a knowledge treasure that can promote Liang Yue's own completion and understanding of the rune system, who from sunset to moonrise, the starry sky is dotted with bright stars, to the dimming of the stars. The first sun rises, and the morning mist fills the valley at dawn. Rarely facing this treasure book with special functions in his hand, Liang Yue was excited and his thoughts flashed for a while. It took a long time before he woke up from the research on this treasure. Slowly exhaling a mouthful of turbid air from his chest, Liang Yue then moved his mind and forced a drop of blood from his fingertip that reflected glittering golden light in the morning light, and dripped it on the surface of the treasure book. The next moment, brilliant light was released from the diamond treasure book in his hand, and instantly illuminated half of the sky of the small city. It wasn't until more than 10 minutes later that the light gradually subsided. At this time, looking at the treasure book in Liang Yue's hand, compared to the book style decorated with diamonds before, it had changed its appearance again. The original bright and flawless treasure diamonds had now dimmed down, but the fluctuation of the entire summoning book had become more mysterious. Without knowing it, a faint orange halo surrounds the body, appearing sacred and noble. I didn't expect that my blood would directly promote the upgrade of this summoning book, and it was even upgraded by 2 levels according to the information in his mind. The levels of this summoning book can be divided into bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, holy book, divine book, and sacred. 8 levels, and in the description of the original plot, the level of this summoning book will indeed continue to upgrade with the improvement of the contractor's own strength and level. In addition, the contractor's own bloodline is also an important factor that affects and determines the level of this summoning book. Liang Yue's current cultivation has reached the tribulation stage of true cultivation, and he also has a variety of evolutionary systems, and he also has the human race Otsutsuki branch bloodline, and the main bloodline is still in a sealed state. Thinking carefully, it is reasonable to be able to promote the upgrade of this summoning book at the same time, at the moment when his own bloodline promoted the upgrade of this treasure book. The special laws in the summoning book also caused some changes in Liang Yue's body's cultivation meridians. It was as if a switch that originally existed in his body had been turned on, along with the influx of a series of knowledge about summoning, application methods, and key information. Liang Yue naturally had a deeper understanding of this summoning book. Opening the first page of this summoning book, what catches the eye is Liang Yue's own Q version headshot. Then below the headshot, it also marked his current summoning and cultivation level. Level 1 New Apprentice, Innate Supreme Level 10. Below this level ranking, there is also a line of official introduction from this summoning book: Novice Apprentice. As a peak powerhouse second only to the guard level, the mere apprentice level novice summoner is obviously not worthy of your noble rank. Why not set a small goal first and sign 100 divine beasts? Below, there are the innate talents of Liang Yue as the treasure book contractor: Elemental Affinity, Elemental Resistance, Yin-Yang Balance, Super Life Resilience, Eye of Truth. A total of 5 talents, but basically they all come from Liang Yue's own cultivation and accumulation over the years. However, this is certainly not all of his attributes. but only the talent options that can be associated with a summoning book, and it is far less comprehensive than the talents listed on the system panel. Opening the second page of the treasure book, what appears on the page is his exclusive life war beast bestowed by this summoning book at this time. The creature on the page is actually a panda with black and white fur and a cute look. Looking at the introduction below the picture, light and dark holy bear, the level is a divine beast, and it is born with 2 attribute talents of light and darkness, and its physical body is strong. It is good at melee combat, its bite force is amazing, it has amazing magic breaking and armor breaking attributes, and its physical and magical defense is strong, the upgraded version of rolling. After that, Liang Yue opened the third page of the treasure book again. Why did little Vajra run up there? And it's another exclusive life war beast. The image that appeared on this third page was a Beeman war beast. Moreover, it was actually little Vajra's body that appeared beside Liang Yue in the system's exclusive war beast module many years ago. This is connected? Okay, it's reasonable to integrate all my own war beasts, pets, etc. into this summoning book, which is indeed more organized than. What about you, Linglong? Thinking of this, Liang Yue then opened the fourth page of the treasure book again. Sure enough, the creature that appeared on the page of this fourth page was another exclusive life war beast, a 9th order life, the void spirit butterfly Yu Linglong. Chapter 847 Fairy Shop. Just then, as Liang Yue was sitting in the center of the small city farm, by the pond where the verdant little tree was planted, carefully examining the specific attributes of his exclusive life battle beasts, a notification sound suddenly came from the system's village communication platform. Subconsciously, he summoned the platform page and saw that it was a call request from Elizabeth. Hasn't it only been a day since we last met? Soon, after connecting to the video link, Elizabeth, Nana, Asuka, and others appeared on the other side not far away. Hinata and Non-Lixiang, along with a group of their pets, were curiously observing a light cocoon about a meter high. What's wrong? Liang Yue asked subconsciously when he saw this. Saying that, Liang Yue turned the summoning tome to Yu Linglong's page with a glance. He quickly found the words evolving after the name of his exclusive life battle pet. Thinking about the series of information streams about the application and operation principles of the tome that were transmitted to his mind when he dripped blood to recognize the tome, he suddenly understood what are exclusive life battle beasts. In fact, it is a unique organism formed by the summoning tome as inspiration, opening a special structure or a rule sequence in the human body for the contractor of the tome, and then combining it with the special rules of the summoning tome. This kind of exclusive life battle beast may be a beast, a bird, an element, a yin spirit, a machine, or some special life form whose existence form is ambiguous. It is inherently an existence closely related to the contractor, sharing life, fighting in combination, and even the strength ranks between each other can complement each other. To be precise, the rank of the exclusive life battle beast itself will continue to increase with the rank of the contractor, and conversely, the strength of the life guardian battle beast will also promote the growth of the contractor itself. In addition, the contractor's own talent abilities will greatly affect the growth and strength of their exclusive life battle beast, and conversely, the skills and talent abilities of the life guardian battle beast can also be used by the contractor. At this time, Yu Linglong was obviously in this situation. Under the connection of the system, she automatically became Liang Yue's exclusive life battle beast, and then passively followed Liang Yue's rank to produce an evolutionary phenomenon. So, according to this logic, Little King Kong should also thinking of this. Liang Yue turned to Little King Kong's exclusive page again. Sure enough, he had also started to evolve. Soon after, more information was sent to the village communication platform. Liang Yue took a look, and this time it was teacher Shizuka calling after the video was connected. After a few exchanges, it was discovered that Little King Kong also seemed to be turning into a cocoon. After briefly explaining the matter of the summoning tome to Elizabeth, teacher Shizuka, and others on the other side of the video, it immediately aroused a burst of envy from the women through the system's connection. With a thought, Little King Kong and Yu Linglong were taken into the exclusive space world inside the summoning tome, providing them with the most comfortable and safe evolutionary space. After that, Liang Yue himself didn't idle. He directly flashed his figure and came to the stronghold world, and then went to the Storm and Cloud public plane through the second floor of the underground hall. The purpose, of course, was to contract the divine beasts, Fire Kirin and Azure Dragon, in that world into the tome. After all, now that he had this set of things in his hand, and the effect was so extraordinary, it would be a pity not to make good use of it. As we all know, there are 4 great divine beasts in the Storm and Cloud world, namely Azure Dragon, Dragon Turtle, Phoenix, and Fire Kirin. Unfortunately, The middle two have been dead for at least 1,000 years, and it is thanks to their death that they created two immortal old monsters for the storm and rain world. Liang Yue naturally had nothing to say about the dead divine beasts. But the two living ones could not be let go after all. They were genuine dragons and Kirins, not to mention how powerful their own power realm was. At least their bloodline was there, and the growth potential was high. The reason why they have not been very outstanding is only because they are limited by the general environment. Before, Liang Yue had never thought about these two. That was only because their realm difference was too far. There was no need. If he started cultivating from a low realm, it would involve too much energy. Now it's good. With a summoning tome in hand, there is no reason to miss it again soon. In just half a day, Liang Yue had successfully taken these two into his pocket. This time, he directly adopted violent means, respectively in Lingayan Cave in Xianfu, and Qianlong Island on the coast of the East China Sea. He beat the Fire Kirin and Azure Dragon half to death, and then forcibly subdued them with a tome in his hand. Then, after returning to the stronghold world, he raised his head and happened to see the Eva Thunder Angel floating foolishly on the sea for hundreds of years without moving. Okay, with a flip of the page, he also included it in the tome. Soon, in the blink of an eye, another month has passed. In reality, Meng Xiao's actions were very swift. The matter that Liang Yue entrusted to her before, to open a chain of fresh food stores in major first-tier cities and provincial capitals, has now been officially completed. Whether it is the purchase, lease and decoration of the store, or the corresponding licenses and fire protection procedures, the entire process has been completed normally. So in recent days, the workers in the farm have also begun to nervously pick various vegetables, fruits, fresh food, and some live fish, chickens, ducks and eggs through the city's own air transport logistics company. They are transported to stores in major cities. Speaking of which, the public's acceptance of this kind of rectangular vehicle that can fly quickly in the air and transport goods is still very high. In fact, even if they don't accept it, there is no way. After experiencing several alien invasion incidents in a row, the people of various countries have actually become accustomed to it, and the nerves in their brains have been trained to be a little thick. This large-scale military combat information is basically everywhere on the internet now, and it cannot be concealed at all. Even in order to allow the people to be psychologically prepared as soon as possible, and to preheat the arrival of virtual worlds, spaceships and other industries. The relevant departments in China sometimes intentionally push the boat along. Therefore, when Liang Yue's Airbus logistics vehicles swaggered through the air over various cities, and finally parked safely in front of his own store and began to unload and sell goods, the performance of the people in various places was still relatively calm. Although it caused a certain degree of onlookers, the various reactions were basically benign. Instead, it promoted Liang Yue's farm products in a roundabout way, stimulating people's desire to buy. Of course, in terms of the quality of various products, fruits and vegetables, meat, eggs, and milk produced in Xiaochang Farm, there is actually no need to advertise it. Especially no chemical fertilizers and no pesticides are used in the planting and growing process. This is just the most basic slogan. Various alien crops and fruits that ordinary people have never seen before have attracted the attention of many people around the fresh food store as soon as they appeared. Without being able to hold back, they wanted to buy a few and take them home for their relatives and friends to taste. In addition, for those who know the industry, farms like Liang Yue's Xiaochang Farm, which grow in an environment with abundant spiritual energy, are even more treasures to them. There is no need to say more about strengthening the body and prolonging life. It is just the basic function of heaven and earth spiritual energy. The key is that for some special groups of people, such as those who practice martial arts, cultivate, or those who are interested in the mystical side of cultivation, these fruits, vegetables, meat, eggs and milk containing spiritual energy will greatly enhance their cultivation efficiency. In addition, some large consumption, the deficiencies caused during the cultivation process, etc., the people who originally needed specific prescriptions and diet supplements, now have these ingredients rich in heaven and earth spiritual energy. Basically, they don't have to worry about it as long as they eat regularly 3 times a day. They can ensure all the nutrients needed for human cultivation. Of course, these excellent crops grown in a special environment are certainly not cheap in themselves. Otherwise, Liang Yue would not have chosen to open stores in major first-tier cities and major provincial capitals. Chapter 848 Unstable Factors. The fruits, vegetables, meat, eggs, and milk from your farm are in such high demand that many people want to order them separately. I've already received tens of thousands of requests, And the number is still growing. I don't even dare to look at the messages from all sorts of leaders on the plot of land in Xiaocheng farm that was set aside specifically for planting alien oilseed trees. Several adolescent golden macaws had already begun to be released in small batches, with the tacit approval of the professional breeders. The farm's melons, fruits, vegetables, and even the feed for livestock like chickens and ducks, had all become food for these little fellows. Liang Yue was currently wandering through the oilseed tree forest, watching a group of workers systematically harvesting the fruits from the trees and gathering the saplings. Meng Xiaoyu, who was at his side, looked particularly excited, her big eyes brimming with unstoppable laughter. But this was quite normal after all. She was the one who brought back those oilseed plants from Xander. Meanwhile, the barren land outside Xiaocheng that she had contracted was now fully equipped with drip irrigation pipes. After more than a month of overtime work with the tree seeds and saplings about to officially enter the planting stage, a bright future was in sight. This was all Meng Xiaoyu's industry. Moreover, it was her first large-scale industry in life, so it was understandable that she was a little excited to protect her land. The young woman spared no expense, hiring another large group of professionals half a month ago to erect a 3-layer steel wire fence around the area. Besides these oilseed plants, Meng Xiaoyu was also eager to plant various medicinal herbs in the land, of course, in addition to preventing erosion from various snakes, insects, rats, and ants. The steel wire fence was also meant to help her guard the land, since Liang Yue planted a small, turquoise tree in his hometown of Xiaocheng that could convert a large amount of heaven and earth spiritual energy. Word had spread, and a considerable number of people had set their sights on the land around Xiaocheng. This included relevant departments, the military, some well-informed influential figures, and their children, family members, confidants, and so on. With such a major event as heaven and earth spiritual energy involved, there would naturally be various conflicts of interest and struggles for power. Meng Xiaoyu's situation was relatively special because she had already contracted the land next to Xiaocheng before Liang Yue planted the turquoise tree. This was purely good luck, a blind cat catching a dead mouse. Now, it was said that the land within 100 kilometers of Xiaocheng had been included in some kind of special planning channel. Even if one had connections or a background, it was impossible to obtain it. Even those barren mountains and rocky hills that were originally worthless had now become planned land. No wonder Meng Xiaoyu was in a hurry to build a steel wire fence. She was probably afraid that one day, she would lose her contracted land without realizing it. It's only been less than a week since we started selling, and the reputation has spread so quickly. Not only were they nutritious, but some vegetables didn't even need soil or extra cultivation. As long as they were exposed to the air and left in a stable environment for a period of time, they could slowly develop from a seed into ripe fruit. During the process, they would automatically absorb moisture from the air and convert light energy to synthesize their own nutrients. They could be eaten raw or cooked, and the taste was quite good, so it was inevitable that people would covet them. Then, on this basis, add the nourishment of abundant heaven and earth spiritual energy. It's not just because of the reputation. Many people have actually obtained information from other channels, knowing that the things produced on your farm are grown by absorbing pure heaven and earth spiritual energy. An ordinary vegetable can be as effective as those tonics on the market, so they want to get a batch in advance every time our dishes are released to make special offerings. Almost, that's not possible. You know that the vegetable garden on the farm only occupies a small area of Xiaocheng, just enough to supply those few fresh food stores every day. Basically, everything can be sold out on the same day, and there's no surplus to make special offerings to others. Then you should appropriately expand the planting area. You don't have to only plant those alien vegetables. Those earth-native vegetables are actually very good too. Then you go plant them. Aren't you going to do some kind of vertical agriculture on your land? The spacing between each oil fruit tree can be a little larger, and then you can plant some vegetables in the middle of the trees. You can also hang some melon vines on the trunks. Is that reliable? Besides, didn't I already plan to plant various medicinal herbs on that land? You can set aside a piece of land to try it out. Maybe it will work. You said, how come there are so many grasses on your farm but no mosquitoes? Even pests are basically invisible. Did you use any special methods, such as formations or something? Meng Xiaoyu rolled her eyes when she heard this, then looked around, seemingly inadvertently, and said, I occasionally throw some light green liquid into those reservoirs. Remember, yeah, those things are actually byproducts of that small tree that can convert heaven and earth spiritual energy. They contain a large amount of wood attribute energy substances. You can think of it as a precious natural treasure. Can it be used for cultivation? It can be used for cultivation, but it's difficult for people with too low a realm to digest. Even that group of ability users and martial artists who came over from the relevant department before couldn't digest a drop in 10 years. If you're not careful, you'll be eroded by the wood attribute energy inside, causing the organs, limbs, or even the entire person to turn into wood. Oh, you mean, those insects, mosquitoes, and so on, are no exception. This liquid is a rare natural treasure that has a fatal attraction to many living things, but except for plants that can absorb it steadily and play a positive role, other animals, insects, and so on, once they ingest too much, they can basically turn into wood on the spot. I see. That's a good thing. It can be used as fertilizer and kill insects. Hey, that's not right. According to this, wouldn't the cattle, sheep, chickens, ducks, and so on raised on your ranch also turn into wood? So what I threw into the reservoirs was not pure liquid, but a mixed substance that had been precisely mixed and diluted by Wu. Diluted tens of thousands of times, it can turn those mosquitoes and pests into wood. And ensure that slightly larger living things don't show any obvious reactions, but in this way, after a long time, there should be some sequelae, right? After all, those cattle, sheep, chickens, ducks, geese, and so on, can't cultivate it. Can probably last for 8 or 9 years. That's okay. In 8 or 9 years, those animals on your ranch should have been replaced more than once. Hey, what if those livestock mutate? What if they adapt to this diluted liquid? Then it means they have the potential to evolve into higher level species and can be given key training. That's right. By the way, according to you, can certain specific groups of people also cultivate by refining this diluted liquid? Probably, but you must first have a reliable cultivation technique. Chinese martial arts or something should be okay, right? The effect is average, about the same as eating vegetables, fruits, meat, eggs, and milk produced on the farm. This liquid is actually more suitable for cultivating various spiritual medicines. You can study it yourself. Okay, I'll report all of this, and then see what the people above do. By the way, the relevant parties have now almost finished exploring the underground water veins in that large basin. Basically, it's the same as the water vein map provided by Wu. They did find abundant underground water there, so they plan to build a lake. Building a lake is certain. Isn't the big pit you dug a ready-made lake bed? Once it's formed, the entire northwest desert will have a rare benign turning point. However, the lightning spear you put there is a bit of an eyesore. It is said that it is just pressing on the node of the water vein, and the electric field it releases will interfere with the operation of some instruments. You can just pull it out yourselves. We've already tried to find someone to try it, but it seems it's not that simple. That's a compressed aggregate of lightning, and I solidified it with runes. You can think of it as a temporary lightning attribute magic weapon that can explode at any time as long as I want, but I don't need to do that. If someone can pull it out, they can get a simple lightning attribute cultivation technique from it, which is a small opportunity I left for those who are destined to. You should pull it out yourself. That thing is an unstable factor for the country. Chapter 849. Bear paws are weak. A lightning spear, merely an accessory containing the basic lightning rune meditation method, was originally a cultivation technique Liang Yue gifted to someone with the right affinity. Unexpectedly, it ended up being regarded as an unstable element. He hadn't anticipated this outcome. It seems these people in the country have become accustomed to peace and lack the suppression and education of aliens. However, since they've already said so, Liang Yue doesn't really care. So, with a wave of his sleeve, hundreds of kilometers away, deep within the pit in the northwest desert, the lightning spear diagonally embedded in the vitrified rock instantly sensed something. In an instant, the lightning spear, about 3 meters long, began to glow all over, its blazing white color dazzling. A surge of restless heat suddenly and rapidly rose like a force 12 gale. It constantly swept the airflow, scouring the side walls of the crater towards the sky. Immediately afterward, a powerful force of lightning abruptly erupted. ZZZT. In an instant, the entire crater, spanning tens of kilometers, was directly filled with intense, violently surging electric currents. Explosive, irregular energy flows directly struck the surrounding earth and rocks, causing them to collapse and disintegrate, plowing countless scorched ravines into the originally smooth vitrified pit walls. Myriad ravines, chaotic and irregular, yet carrying an unusual violent beauty. The originally cooled scorched rock walls were once again beaten into magma color. Large swaths of white gas rapidly rose in the lightning storm, carried by the surging airflow into the high sky, leaving a heavy fishy smell in the surrounding air. Truly, its aura soared to the heavens, shaking the earth. For a full 5 or 6 minutes, the power of lightning in the crater gradually dissipated. Looking at the crater now, It had actually been directly eroded and expanded by the lightning force released from the lightning spear's disintegration at the same time. Below the crater, in the middle and other sidewall positions, hollow gaps were opened, and streams of water continuously from underground. This underground water was powerful and had an astonishing reserve. In just a few hours, it spread upward from the bottom of the crater for hundreds of meters like surging fountains. It continuously carried massive water resources, filling the pit. However, the volume of this crater was indeed not small. It took a full half a month for the surging underground water to cover just over half of the large pit. The massive underground water was still steadily spreading upward at a speed visible to the naked eye looking at it from Xiao Wu's panoramic sandbox. A brand new lake had appeared in the vast desert of the Great Basin. This lake was roughly circular, with a diameter of over 100 kilometers at its outermost edge, and its water output was astonishing. It is conceivable that when the lake completely stabilizes and these massive water resources are developed and utilized, the entire Northwest will erupt with what kind of vitality? The most conservative estimate is that even if it only develops agriculture, it will be enough to recreate a giant canon in China. 2 months have passed. Well, it's been 2 months since the return from Xander. According to the rules previously set by Liang Yue, a new round of travel quota selection has begun compared to the previous time. This round's quota has increased from 30 to 45. Everyone who donates more than $10,000 in charitable funds to Tina and Miliva's foundations is eligible to enter the quota selection range. However, in order to prevent certain unethical situations from occurring, such as human wave tactics, the number of people with selection qualifications in each country has been fixed at 100. Of course, even with such restrictions, it is still impossible to avoid the drawbacks of human manipulation. The Chinese side, as with a previous travel standard, was directly arranged for 10 regarding this lottery result, which obviously has a suspicion of cheating. The other countries that have invested a lot of attention in this trip basically have no objection and have chosen to default to this result. Then, Dumao is still about the same as last time. Miliva arranged 5 places, and similarly, Ermao was given 5 places by Tina. In fact, before the last trip, Tina also gave, like Miliva, 4 places to her motherland. But what is different is that the Dumao bear firmly grasped the qualification quota in its own hands, and finally successfully established a small scientific research base on Xander. And Ermao probably also wanted to keep it for their own use, but because the strength in the bear's paw was not enough, they couldn't hold it, and in the end, none of the 4 places were kept. And they were all sold. But thinking about it, it's also very normal. After all, Ermao's situation is relatively special. Over the years, they have abolished their martial arts themselves. More than half of the high-level officials and powerful military generals within the country are American citizens. This time, among the 5 places that Tina left for them, it would actually be very difficult for Ermao to keep even one in the end. In addition to China, Mao, and Ermao, these 3 relationship countries, directly taking away 20 places, the United States drew 2, and the United Kingdom drew 1. But because during the process, the 2 sides didn't care about human affairs, and somehow secretly contacted Elizabeth and Betty, and greeted Liang Yue. Therefore, the United States and the United Kingdom were given an additional 3 places by him. In addition, before this, when Liang Yue purchased Bangkok's from Samba, he also took out a place as a purchase fee. Of course, these 7 places sent out are not included in the official 45 prescribed lottery range, and are additional items outside the plan. In addition to this, the remaining 22 places are the shares that the other countries on Earth need to draw by luck. However, within these places, it is not absolutely fair because Liang Yue also has some personal preferences. This is the unspoken rule under the framework of the rules. For example, the 2 East Asian countries of the island country and South Korea, as well as the Jews, will basically not be selected. Of course, the current selection results are not necessarily the final attribution results of the quota in the remaining month. There will definitely be many lucky relevant people who hold the quota, who will be lobbied, tempted, and traded by various reasons and forces, so as to trade the quota to others. For example, Ermao. After all, in terms of rules, Liang Yue stated at the beginning that a quota can be freely traded as long as it is fair and gives enough compensation. He will not say much after the previous first round of travel to Xander. For the countries of the world on Earth, each such travel quota is undoubtedly extremely precious. If possible, anyone who has obtained a quota and their country behind them would not want to give up or transfer the quota because it is obvious that the possession of this quota, and even the amount, is related to the rise of their country and the future of the nation. However, it is precisely because this quota is too important, and the hidden benefits are. Everyone thinks so, but unfortunately, The strength of individuals in countries in this world is not balanced. Those with slightly weaker strength basically find it difficult to keep the quota in their hands until the end. A month is enough for the list of ownership of this quota to undergo a huge shift no matter which world you are in. If you want to achieve the ideal share, in the final analysis, you still have to look at strength. Chapter 850 The wind is blowing. As the deadline for the flight to Xander approached, the entire Earth seemed to enter a period of turmoil. Inter-country diplomatic activities became frequent, and the political atmosphere was treacherous. Unlike the harmony of a month ago in particular, those countries that failed to obtain a place in this selection process but were not weak in strength had been making constant small moves recently. For example, Israel, like a nail, was directly stuck in the Middle East due to Liang Yue's personal preferences and other reasons. The country failed to obtain a travel spot under the lottery rules, even though their donations to Tina and Milovis foundations were not small. But in fact, from the very beginning, Liang Yue had excluded them from the scope of spot selection. Interestingly, as Middle Eastern countries, Iran and the wealthy Gulf countries, which were close to them, obtained 2 and 1 travel spots respectively. For another example, the island nation, which has always regarded itself as the leader of East Asia, also failed to obtain a spot this time. However, the Solomon Islands, Malaysia, and Brunei, which are also Pacific Island countries, were very lucky to each obtain one. Under such circumstances, some people and some countries naturally couldn't sit still. After all, this travel spot was too important, and what it represented was not just a trip to an alien planet. According to previous cases, once they arrived, Liang Yue would also distribute activity funds of at least 100,000 star dollars to each traveler, and equip them with personal wrist computers, translators, and virtual world connection tools. The 4 countries of China, Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom had even taken the opportunity of their first trip to Xander to directly establish scientific research bases there. They were wholeheartedly stationed there, and for several months, they had been racing against time to study alien technology. It was said that the first batch of travelers had formed a joint project team, and the main research direction was the accumulation and manufacturing of various technologies related to spaceships. It was said that the Chinese team had successfully completed scientific research docking before the end of the last trip and was able to start related research projects based on some existing technical data, and those who did not have the ability to establish scientific research bases on alien planets also gained a lot based solely on the 100,000 star dollar activity funds in their hands. They directly brought back many new technologies and new species from Xander that were eye-catching and had a significant impact. Now, more than 2 months have passed, and these technologies and species with unique functions from alien planets have mostly begun to enter the practical application stage. Although it is still far from the stage of large-scale mass production, and at least a few years of accumulation are still needed, this development trend is beyond doubt. Moreover, according to the first batch of returning travelers, they seem to have reached a rather solemn agreement during their time on Xander, that is, to recognize the legality, legitimacy, and exclusivity of a series of goods and technologies purchased by these travelers from each other on Xander. At the same time, their respective countries will legally have the exclusive right to operate the goods or technologies in the next few years, and enjoy similar protection of rights and interests as patent protection laws on Earth. The signing of this agreement undoubtedly guaranteed the interests of those pioneers from a system perspective, but it also limited the efforts and pace of those who came later, further increasing the sense of crisis in the hearts of these latecomers. Upon hearing this information, as a famous small country on Earth with scarce resources but a developed economy and a good technological foundation for countries and groups like Israel and the island nation, which are ambitious and unwilling to lag behind, the urgency in their hearts can be imagined. But hitchhiking is like this. Often one step behind leads to step by step behind. Before the Foundation's lottery list was confirmed, they had actually done their best to use their national power, frequently sending diplomatic missions, business teams, etc., to try their best to lobby among the major powers, especially those countries like China, the United States, Russia, and the United Kingdom, which had already established scientific research studios on alien planets, spared no effort to reach verbal cooperation agreements with them to this end. Even if it meant sacrificing some existing benefits, they would never give up. But, if you really want to implement this agreement, you must at least have a spot to go to Xander, right? At least there must be one. Otherwise this cooperation agreement can only stay on paper. Then, the lottery results were announced, and they were not on the list. As a result, under the agitation of this group of countries, the current Earth can be described as stormy, with lightning and thunder, turbulent waves, and constant winds. The trees want to be quiet, But the wind doesn't stop. In short, travel spots are now a scarce commodity. It's not like you can get them casually just because you have money. For those small countries with serious lack of strength, even if they are lucky enough to get a spot, they probably won't be able to keep it. But the current international situation has given them some room for bargaining to a certain extent after all. If only one powerful country sent an aircraft carrier battle group to their door and asked them for a spot, then naturally there would be no room for choice after all. With China's success as a precedent, this time the list had 10 spots directly filled. These two traditional world powers can't lag behind too much and watch themselves being left behind even later. They used their network of relationships to contact Elizabeth and Betty to help whisper sweet nothings, and then each country was given an extra 3 spots. It was still not enough at this time. Being able to get as many spots as possible from other small countries in the world is the absolute right thing to do, and for those semi-powerful countries without spots, there is no room for retreat or compromise. Multifaceted attacks and all-out efforts are their only choice. The wind is rising. Different from the hot, dry, and sandy environment of the Northwest in previous years, Liang Yue's farm at this time seemed a bit cool. Even though the time had reached August, the hottest season of the year, the small city still seemed gentle and pleasant, with the climate remaining at around 25, 6, 7 or 8 degrees. The air humidity was suitable, and everywhere was filled with the fragrance of nature and vegetation. The azure blue sky without a trace of clouds, and the bright sun with a halo, seemed to have no impact on the small city at all. A moment later, a slight electric vehicle motor sound came from far and near. To the orchard of Liang Yue's farm the person who came was Liang Yue, who had been busy on her own land, supervising the planting of oil plants. Just got the news, a tornado suddenly blew up in the Northwest Basin. The wind seems to be quite strong. I heard that a large amount of dust was rolled up from the desert at the latest. A sandstorm will blow over in 2 hours. Don't worry, I've been prepared for it. Liang Yue was sitting leisurely under a thick fruit tree at this time, holding the ancient and luxurious summoning codex in his hand. Carefully looking through it, hearing the other party's words, he didn't even bother to raise his head. Are you still planning to slap the sandstorm away like last time? Liang Yue asked after hearing this. After speaking, this woman had already jumped down from the four-wheeled electric car under her, and walked to Liang Yue's side, turning her face and curiously looking at the codex in his hand. After the previous precedent, Xiao Wu has specially designed a small climate regulator for this purpose. Didn't you see that even in the middle of summer, you don't feel very hot under the sun? So that's how it is. Can the climate regulator also deal with sandstorms? That thing is like a specific field. Wind exceeding a certain level and air containing a certain concentration of foreign objects will be blocked outside the coverage area. That's good. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.